Okay, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host, Ben. Again, I'm solo this week. Well, the last few days have been rather depressing from a Liverpool fan's point of view. So I'm going to get into all the Liverpool Chelsea stuff that happened. Weirdly enough, an actual game took place between the two as well, and it took maybe second place. But between what was happening over the weekend, I'm going to talk about the Caicedo stuff, the Roman Lavia stuff, which ended up kind of happening as well in the background, and then to continue on with what happened in the weekend, Newcastle and Brighton I thought really did make statements, and then Arsenal and City, they both win, but it was less convincingly so. Neither were really impressive, and to be honest, maybe in the bigger picture news, both suffered some pretty possible big injuries. I mean, obviously, Man City and Kevin De Bruyne, it looks like there could maybe even be surgery involved. I mean, that could have him out maybe till Christmas, which could be a massive story, which we'll get into. And then Arsenal and Julian Timber, and Timber suffered the injury in the first half, and then it looked like they're just trying to hold him on till halftime to make the sub, and then no, he ended up starting the second half, and he was only able to go like 30 seconds, and that was weird. So maybe questionable decisions by both medical staffs, club medical staffs, to be honest, because I thought, I even mentioned it last week. I thought Kevin De Bruyne looked tight when he was running just for Arsenal last week. So that was a bit surprising and could be costly. And then we'll move on to another kind of theme I'm going to have is Wolves and Everton both lose their game, but I think maybe their fans have some reason for hope this season, at least given what we saw in week one, which I'll get into. And basically for the same reasons. And the reason why they lost their game is also for the same reason, which is funny enough. And then Spurs and Brentford gave us a really fun treat before the Liverpool Chelsea game. I actually thought their game was better. More goals. Just in general, it seemed like at least in the Liverpool Chelsea game, it kind of petered out in the second half. The Spurs and Brentford game just end to end the entire time. But another thing about that is both clubs are starting in new eras. So the one without David Raya for Brentford, and we saw the Flecken era kick off, and it wasn't, well, if you're a Brentford fan, and he did make a couple good saves in the second half. There was one on Son. But there was maybe on the Emerson Royal goal, there was maybe some doubts that maybe he could have done a little bit better. We'll get into that. And then were Spurs the one without Kane begins. I wasn't really expecting this. I talked about it a little bit last week. I know he was linked to Bayern. He actually does move to Bayern, and he ended up even showing up. He ends up coming on in the second half in the German Cup that happened on the weekend that Bayern ended up losing. So Kane joined to try to win some trophies with a different club, and he begins kind of with this the way he left for Spurs. He begins kind of the same trouble. But we'll kind of get into that. I mean, it is a long form EPL review plan today, but there's a lot of football/soccer happening right now. And so before I do that, I want to acknowledge Spain's win today over Sweden in the Women's World Cup. They make it to the final, and we get to find out who they play tomorrow in the other semifinal between England and host country Australia. And before this tournament, I honestly did have Spain as my favorite going in. But what's funny is I mentioned that to a couple of my friends who do actually follow this a little bit better, and they were like, "Oh, they have some massive turmoil in their player camp," and apparently they, a couple, like half their players, a number on Barcelona even, had a mutiny against their coach, and basically a few of them even didn't refuse to participate. So this isn't even like the full strength Spain team in some ways. So it's been so I was not expecting that. So I got lucky here. But they've been just fantastic the entire tournament, and they've gotten the reason why I thought about them is I've heard about Alexia Putellas for a couple of years now, and I know she's a two-time Ballon d'Or winner. She had a really bad ACL injury before the women's Euros last year. And a lot of people, I remember, kind of theorized that her miss was maybe the reason, maybe the difference maker when England played Spain in the knockouts last year. And that game was actually a really fantastic game. It was Spain were winning, and then England came back kind of late to get it into extra time, and then England ended up winning in extra time. But Putellas hasn't really been the difference maker. In fact, she ended up starting today, and really the main thing that happened was they've had this 19-year-old Salma I can't say names. Pariello, who has come on and she was the difference maker versus the Netherlands, and she got the first goal in this game, and then Spain conceded, and then right when it looked like it was going to go into extra time again, they got almost like a wonder goal, kind of going short on a corner kick, getting to the top of the box, and then someone just having a wonderful strike that beat the Sweden keeper. So Spain do make it to the final, and then who do they get for the final? Because I do feel like Spain and England was probably going to be a popular pick. But the England do have to get past the 10th ranked team in FIFA on their own, and it's not just that. I mean, Sam Kerr is probably going to play. She hasn't been able to start. Has made a couple appearances the last 2 games. But if Sam Kerr does play, she knows. You imagine she knows a lot of these English players. She knows maybe how they play, how their faults. England has been playing Rachel Daly as a left back. She hasn't. I mean, she's been a striker for her club in Aston Villa. Maybe that ends up kind of showing up, but it's not going to be easy for England to get to the final because it's not just a good Australia team. They're the host country, and we've kind of seen that in a number of tournaments where being able to host this thing matters. It makes teams better. It makes teams harder to beat. I don't think it was insignificant that England ended up winning Women's Euros last year because it was hosted in England and the final was in Wembley. So that's just something for us to maybe think about with 2020, with 2026. Just around the corner. Not necessarily to win, but to at least make a respectable run. Maybe go further than we've done before. I mean, even South Korea, I think in 2002 were semifinals. This thing can do that to you. It can jump you up, and Australia are a good team in their own right. So. It's exciting. It's gonna be a fun final. I think it'll be at like 4 a.m. So it'll be another thing I'll have to like DVR. But anyways, that'll just be kind of what we will have to look forward to with that. And then something that's crazy that's been happening, in the U.S. is the Leagues Cup has kind of taken me by surprise. I've actually been kind of I've been following it. I've been enthralled with it, and really, it's been because of Messi. Messi, Tata Martino, Jordi Alba, and Busquets have come in and taken what was the absolute worst team in the MLS. I don't really follow the MLS that much, to be honest, but I do know that they at least in the standings are the worst team, and he's transferred them into a juggernaut. At least listening to the commentary in a number of these games, they've talked about how Miami they struggle to score the entire, at least the first half of the MLS season. They are also really big in conceding. You can see that their defense has been really rough. But they've been they've been lights out since Messi has arrived. And from a perception for the league, I'm kind of in between here because it's way more fun than I expected, and it's great for entertainment. It's probably spiked a lot of outside interest. And it's been a ton of fun to follow. But is it that great that Messi has come in and yes, he's been an absolute star. Uh, but again, he's come in and really everyone that I mentioned has just kind of just completely changed facelift Miami immediately. And it's just been isn't necessarily great for the league that this is happening. Is Messi exploiting maybe some of the defensive faults in our league? I mean, that's kind of being a little of a pessimist. I mean, the flip side of that is it's been super entertaining. He's been and Messi really has been a star. Carrying the team, scoring multiple free kicks. I think he was involved in all 4 goals versus Dallas. A lot of these games have just been frantic, uncontrolled, end-to-end chaos. So at least, again, from an entertainment point of view, it's been wonderful. And when you're looking at it from maybe a different perspective, where you're like, how good is this quality? How is this league to judge on who should get maybe USMNT international call-ups? I think that I think at least what I've seen for the last couple of games, that I think gets highlighted a little bit more because some of the defense, everyone is just kind of falling for a fake, maybe a fade. People are ball watching, not really watching runners. Keepers have made some errors in the Dallas game. There was a horrible own goal. In the Dallas game, like, the finishing was really, really poor as well. Yasi Ferreira didn't have his best game, and so on one side, I do want to enjoy it, but on the other side, it's not just Messi. Like, we're seeing this guy Robert Taylor. I think he scored like 4 goals and has had 2 assists in like 4 games. And 18-year-old Kamansky has just come in, and he looks good. He looks comfortable, kind of getting on the ball. He looks comfortable turning, making good decisions. 18 years old, and I think he is Florida born. So U.S. So I imagine I just mentioned how maybe it's not the best league for call-ups. I imagine we'll probably see him soon. I don't really know if he was even in the cards before this little Leagues Cup thing, but um, I mean, there is that kind of perception. I think that's the reason why a lot. I'm not just the only one. I think it's kind of growing that more and more people want less MLS players to have a serious role in the national team, or at least MLS players that are seasoned vets. Maybe I'll put it that way. Anyone that's over 26 or 27 that's still playing in the league that hasn't adventured out elsewhere. I think that's maybe where the concern is. But other than that, I shouldn't kind of continue kind of trashing it. The Leagues Cup has been fun. So and Messi has a chance to make the final. I think tonight, and we'll kind of see if that happens, and then. I don't know who they will end up playing afterwards, but I think Nashville and maybe a Mexican team. So we'll have to see. And I think another thing that it's big tonight is I think if they win, there will be a Champions League spot. A CONCACAF Champions League spot. But if you get into that, maybe you win that. I think that would get you into the uh, the FIFA Club World Cup. And what's funny is I think because Ronaldo's team ended winning the Arab World Cup or the Arab Champions League, the Saudi champion, whatever happened on the on the weekend, there was a trophy involved. I know that. Salmani kind of taking some pictures and smiling. He's probably going to be involved in that, and it does take place in America. So it'd be really funny if we get to see Messi v Ronaldo again. That's probably kind of getting carried away, but is supposed to happen next year, and I'm not really expected to care about the Club World Cup. I would probably care if we got to see that. So that'll probably be on the cards. We'll have to see. And then just to quickly go over the transfer drama, Harry Kane does leave, and he does join Bayern, and he starts his career kind of the same way he left his Spurs one, losing a trophy, but not his fault. He just came on in the second half. They were already losing by a lot, but I just think it is kind of weird. He's joined for 4 years, and it is what it is. Bayern to me still lack a DM to win the ball back, or they've lacked a holder to kind of just stay in place. They have Kimmich, who can be a really good controller in possession, but I think they've been vulnerable for that for a while. They've tried, since Thiago's left, they tried to play Goretzka there. That hasn't really worked. They've brought in Konrad Laimer, funny enough, from Leipzig. And he's a high energy guy. He can he's a press monster. But he's not really a holder either. And I think their midfield can sometimes get way too exposed. Also, Upamecano continues to look vulnerable. And looking back, it's weird. Bayern basically had their pick of which RB Leipzig center back they wanted. They picked Upamecano over Konate. Looking back, I'm grateful for that because I rate Konate over Upamecano. But anyways, it's Leipzig are just incredible in how they're able to keep rebounding despite just losing everyone poaching their players every single year. It seems whenever someone takes a Leipzig player, they have someone just as good, just waiting in the wings, waiting in their Salzburg pool, or maybe they can find someone elsewhere. They replaced Christopher Nkunku with Xavi Simons of PSV, which already feels genius. I feel like by the time it's Christmas, everyone's going to know who Xavi Simons is. If they don't already, because he's had a couple chances to show up when Holland's had some national games, and he's looked good for Holland or the Netherlands. They've also signed a young striker who had a very fantastic campaign for Lens last season, getting Lens in the Champions League. Basically, I think Lens ended up missing out to PSV or PSG by only like a point or two. I think they did finish second in Ligue 1 in Luis Opendana. And then, this is a team that's lost Schlupperschlei, lost Leimer, lost Nkunku. All three played in this game a year ago to Bayern, losing 5-3. And all they've done a year later is turn around and pump them by 3 goals, led by Danny Olmo's meeting a hat trick. And I imagine maybe after this campaign, maybe people try to poach Danny Olmo. We'll have to say. And then moving on, Chelsea seemed to break all financial fair play rules, all rules in general, and it looks like they found a way to sign both Caicedo and Roman Lavia, and it looks like they're trying to sell Michel Elise of Crystal Palace after already spending $800 million. The spending is out of control, and what they're also doing is every single time they sign a player, they're signing them to like 7, 8, 9 year contracts. And that's kind of a way they're able to kind of cheat the books a little bit here. But I don't think it's good. It's not just because they beat Liverpool to a player. I think they're hoarding players. You have, and I realize they have some injuries here, but they're just signing people just to kind of sign them at the minute. That Leslie Ujikana guy is the same age as Roman Lavia. Now, obviously, Roman Lavia has EPL experience. You imagine you're going to rate that. Maybe the idea is just send him on loan. Maybe send Andre Santos on loan. I have to imagine this isn't good news for Conor Gallagher, who looked really good versus Liverpool. Though I don't think it's controversial to say that he's not really a kind of a pivot midfielder either. He's more of an attacking midfielder. So maybe he would can benefit maybe with a move. We'll have to maybe see. Chelsea has also not had an issue just deciding to just move players on if anyone they don't really rate or favor. So maybe they're already even done. They are honestly they are weak at striker. If something happens to Jackson, I have no idea what they're going to do. Again, they're without Nkunku for a good stretch, maybe till Christmas. So maybe Chelsea still tried to keep on. It's been bonkers. And it's probably something that uh, is probably not nearly gonna show up now, but maybe coming soon. There'll be changes to this because I can't imagine it's not just Liverpool. I can't imagine other clubs are enjoying this either. And then Mbappe decides to stay at PSG, or at least said he is open to extending his contract, and that's maybe caused Real Madrid to go into an identity crisis. Though it seems Bellingham's trying to calm some nerves. He scored a really good goal in his La Liga debut. But Real Madrid have suffered not only an identity crisis, an injury crisis. They've lost Courtois, it looks like, to an ACL. They've lost Eder Militao, maybe to an ACL. And their new signing, Arda Güler, looks like he has a bad knee injury as well. I don't know if it's ACL, but apparently he'll be out for some time. And Real Madrid really, for striker options, I think it's Joselu. And that's really it. Right now, they're basically trying Jude Bellingham as like a false nine. So he's having fun. He's getting a lot of freedom. And then you're just kind of asking for, Vinny and Rodrigo to create for you. So does Real Madrid have to maybe sell a player or two to get some funds to go out and get a striker, or maybe go out and get a defender. So there's a name I'll bring up for Liverpool. That'll I'll mention later. It's probably not going to happen, but it's just kind of outside the box kind of thinking. It'll be fun. Again, it's probably not going to happen, but anyways. And then usually we kind of kick this off with a story or take of the week. And there's no shortage to choose from. I'm going to be bold or lame, whichever one you want to view this, and say that the way the table is now. So Newcastle, Brighton, Man City, and Arsenal. There's your top four for the end of the season. Brighton fourth for Champions League, and Arsenal and City maybe duke it out again. But maybe one ends worse than last season because Newcastle looks strong enough to me to maybe push them both and maybe kind of edge second. We'll have to see. It's not just because Newcastle scored 5. It's just because where I thought they were weak last year, they've improved. And we saw it in the first game at least. That Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes midfield pairing is going to be really, really good, as is Alexander Isak and Callum Wilson as your scoring nines. Now, how are they going to adapt to playing, twice a week football? How are they going to adjust to Champions League where they didn't have to do this last season? And in fact, the one kind of thing to highlight is once they started playing in those cups, in those knockout games in the in January and February, it did seem their legs kind of got tired. But that's the reason why getting someone like Tonali and Bruno and you're going to maybe be able to keep more of the ball. You won't necessarily have to work so hard without it to win it back, because it seemed their identity last year was prime Klopp. It was heavy metal football. to the max, and they were really good at pressing and winning the ball high upfield. But how sustainable is that? Well, we'll have to get to that. But that is just kind of what I'm throwing out there now. It helps because he scored 5 goals and beat a good Aston Villa team, in my opinion. Though Aston Villa did have a really bad injury with Tyrone Mings and completely changed how they wanted to play with that high line, which we'll get to as well. But that said, the EPL does return, so I'll get started with Liverpool and Chelsea. And it wasn't the best game to kind of lead with. I always kind of lead with Liverpool, but just because the insane stuff that was happening in the background. So it does end 1-1 goal from Luis Diaz and then Axel Diaz. But it was the craziest 48 hours leading up to a game that I can remember. Basically, two clubs were at a standstill over Caicedo, and they're just kind of, and then they're facing each other to open the game on Sunday, and it started off with a bang, but it did really kind of peter out in the second half, which has been a theme when these two sides meet. To be honest, it is stalemates. And last year they did play two of the worst 0-0 games in the entire season. And then the year before in the FA Cup and the EFL Cup, it was also scoreless, and then went to PKs, and then Liverpool beat them in PKs. So I did figure these two playing would just kind of be a story by itself, and then out of nowhere, I think starting Wednesday night, Chelsea sent in a bid for Lavia, which made people go, "What the hell?" Because people thought Liverpool were kind of close to getting Lavia, and then what's weird is everyone knew what Southampton wanted. They wanted basically 50 million because they apparently Man City have some kind of a buyback clause, or Man City have something where Southampton can get paid that amount of money, and so maybe it's a sell-on clause, and so that's what Southampton were looking for, just anyone that could either match the offer or better it, and Chelsea bid basically 1 million under that. I think it was 48 or 49. So it wasn't really a real bid. It was almost kind of goading Liverpool a little bit. And so Liverpool responded out of nowhere, doing a gigantic bid for Moises Caicedo. And this kind of rocked just everyone. It just came out of nowhere. Everyone knew that Chelsea had been trying 80 million bids and been rejected. Liverpool generally do not do this. And it was just bonkers. And then it seemed like Liverpool had actually reached an agreement, and with something like $110 million bid, it seemed like the player had been a game to agree to a medical. And then I wake up the next morning, and all of a sudden the agent is holding a standstill, stopping the plane, stopping the medical from happening, demanding that Chelsea match the offer because the player only wants Chelsea. And then the next 2 days happen. The gameplay is played, and then Chelsea end up basically signing the player. So that was just absolutely bonkers. It basically kicked off also with the Mbappe news happening. So I don't know if maybe Liverpool were waiting for maybe Madrid to go for Mbappe to maybe sell Tchouaméni. I don't know. I was wondering that they had Jude Bellingham money. They had a pot of money stashed away for Jude Bellingham that they hadn't used. So I'm just glad I'm not going crazy. But the $100 million bid for one player, I did think was a little much because they need a little help elsewhere, which we'll kind of get into. We'll get into the game. Chelsea did start with a back three with Diaz, Silva, and Colwell. Colwell was very, very good. He got beat by Salah a little bit, but after that, he showed up, and he was also just incredible with his delivery. You can tell why Brighton want him. And then Reece James, Enzo, Gallagher, and Chilwell, and then James and Chilwell basically ran the show. And then Sterling and Carney and Jackson kind of leading the line, basically being able to have a free roll, run to where any of the space was. And Jackson played well. He did have a couple chances to actually win the game and did kind of blow them. So that could maybe be something to watch. But it seems like he's going to get chances in the boatloads. Enzo, it looks like he'll be able to pick him out whenever he wants. Maybe Carney didn't have his best game. Maybe you imagine Mudryk could slot in and do a little bit better. Sterling actually Sterling didn't have his best season last season, and he looked up for it here. So that'll maybe be something to watch as well. And then for Liverpool went with a 4-3-3. It was Trent Konate, Virgil, and Robbo, kind of Alexis as the 6. We saw that a little bit in the preseason, so that wasn't that surprising. Szoboszlai and Gakpo in midfield, I kind of got what I wanted. I mentioned it last week. I wanted to see Gakpo in midfield. I thought at least what he offers he drops deep anyways, and what he offers on the ball is quite good. He actually did help create a couple chances. But defensively, it was a disaster. And basically, Chelsea lived down that side with Gakpo not really knowing how to mark Enzo on that side or Sterling. And basically, Andrew Robinson had to deal with 2v1s the entire game, whether it was Reece James kind of running at him and doing 1-2s with Sterling or the opposite. Just Robinson did not have his best game. And that maybe gets to another thing. Robinson is going to be an issue, I think, this season, which is unfortunate. But I mean, to get off with to start with the game, there was a chance for Liverpool. Kind of Jota shakes us off Sloboshai, which is kind of annoying. It would have been maybe goal of the year. I mean, just a slick passing in the build-up. Sloboshai gets the ball, basically carries it 30 yards all the way into Chelsea's penalty area, going past defenders for fun. It looks like he's about to faint one more time and try his shot, maybe for the corner. And then Jota just kind of pops up and flops at the end. And there was a lot of dread from this game, but from my perspective. But one thing to maybe be hopeful about is uh, McAllister and Szoboszlai again look the real deal. And nothing else, it is going to be fun to at least watch them. Both offer unique things, and both are basically magicians with the ball at their feet. It's just something Liverpool have not had under Klopp, at least in midfield. And so that's at least something. We mentioned how they needed to improve the midfield. They've at least done it on the ball. It's just out of possession now. That's the real bugaboo. And then we have a chance for Enzo. This is blocked by Konate, but this may be Enzo's best game, which I mentioned. He was just having fun picking his passes for fun because Liverpool couldn't press him, turn him over. Liverpool also couldn't find a way to mark him. And he created a number of danger moments. But on this play is really good because Gakpo, it shows Gakpo is confused on who to mark. He doesn't follow Enzo. And so Chelsea get him the ball in space, and immediately he finds a perfect ball to Raheem Sterling, who's positioned himself kind of in between the space between Virgil and Robinson. And then Sterling gets the ball, runs down the wing, and then pulls a cross back to find Enzo, who basically sprints past to get into the box. And he's maybe getting this on target if Konate doesn't get there last second. So it was the first warning sign for Liverpool. We have a chance for Salah in the 12th minute. He strikes the post with a curler. The reason why I want to touch on this is the play in the build-up was fantastic. So it comes immediately following like that Enzo chance. So Gakpo is a mess defensively, but he's unreal on the ball. Liverpool kind of, Liverpool are able to get on the attack, and he bodies off two Chelsea players in this movement. First, collecting it near Liverpool's penalty area. I mean, this could have possibly been a turnover. It was a risky pass. He does amazing to kind of spin in a tight area, escape pressure, and then he finds Diaz out wide, and then Gakpo continues his run, and then Diaz feeds him the ball, and then Gakpo again bodies off. I think it's Diazy here. And he gets into the box, and the only maybe critique here is he doesn't go for goal himself. He tries to find Salah, and the pass is too hard, and it's behind Salah. Salah can only recycle possession, and then basically he tries to curl Sanchez from distance, and it's close because it does hit the bar. And what sucks is if Salah's shots just lower and forces a save, I think Sanchez can only parry it to Luis Diaz, who would have been onside. And then we'll get to the goal. So it is scored by Luis Diaz. It's incredible passing from the back under pressure. I mean, they cut Chelsea open here. Trent beats Jackson to a Chelsea through ball. Alisson then passes it to Szoboszlai, who one times it to Konate, who then quickly feeds it to McAllister, who then looks up and finds Salah kind of upfield, kind of isolated with Colwell. And Colwell doesn't get tight enough on him. Salah is able to just kind of, carry the ball up to maybe the top of the box, and then he's able to pick out Diaz, making a beautiful run behind Diaz, able to stay on sides, and then, able to slide the finish past Sanchez. And it is a fantastic goal, and it's a glimpse of what the future can maybe be when Liverpool can learn how to play on the back and learn, as the chemistry kind of grows, because the one touch, this goal happens with like 3 or 4 one touch passes, led by McAllister and Szoboszlai, and so and Trent played a role as well. So, and then we'll move on. There was a chance for Chelsea here. So, Colwell again was maybe at fault a little bit for the goal, but he does well here. I mean, he isn't pressured and sends a perfectly weighted ball over the top of Chilwell, who has gotten behind Alexander-Arnold. And then Konate kind of comes off and does lay a hand on Chilwell, bringing him down. It's not a PK, but it maybe could have been close. And then we have Jackson getting a chance. There's a ball crossed in, I think, by James. And this is close. He just he drags the shot wide. He could have put this on target. He had another shot later on that was maybe even closer, that he could have done better, and he ended up hitting it over the bar. And then Salah scores a fantastic goal, and it is, from my point of view, I'm a little bit biased, but I think this should have stood. This is an amazing goal, at least from the team perspective as well, because Kanate feeds the ball to McAllister in the middle of the field, and he does really well to collect it under pressure, and then quickly finds Trent feet, and then he immediately just one times a lovely through ball that splits the Chelsea back line. Salah's able to chase onto it. He's got Sanchez 1v1, and it's the calmest finish you can see. But apparently, his Salah is judged offsides because of his shoulder. Um, and it's just the move is so good and so slick. This should have counted. And I'm of the point of view now that if you have to go to VAR and you have to draw lines, it's not obvious to the naked eye. He's onside. I don't understand. Like I like the idea of actually having VAR, and I like the idea of you can't have human error with refs. Um, but I do think there's still human error involved with drawing these lines. And so if you don't have automated offsides, which I feel like that's eventually where we're going to go anyways. They have that in the Women's World Cup. They have that, they have it just in FIFA tournaments. That's probably where we're going with this. But at least for now, I have a problem with it. But anyways, and this does end up costing him. It would have been not only just kind of a 2-goal lead. Salah wanted to keep his record of scoring on opening day. And because it doesn't come off, he got upset at the manager when he was subbed off in like the 75th minute, which is dumb. So, and that probably drew some storylines as well, which wasn't really needed. But anyways, that doesn't count. And then Chelsea are able to get the equalizer. And what sucks is Trent makes an amazingly good defensive play to stop a dangerous cross right before this. So James kind of showcases his ability to hold on to the ball tight on the touchline, and he fools Jota and Diaz. And then James finds Sterling, who showcases the same ability to get past Gakpo. And then Sterling does a dangerous square ball across the goal that Trent's able to kind of knee over for a corner kick. But the corner kick comes from just Robinson, Jota, Diaz, and Gakpo being just really bad defensively. And Chelsea get the corner kick. The ball is recycled. I think it's headed back in, and Diaz scores. Trent starts off being behind or in front of Diaz, and then Diaz just kind of beats him to the loose ball. It is what it is. He made a good play before that, and then he just kind of gets beat here. Liverpool did have a number of chances to kind of stop this and clear it, so it's not all on Trent. But anyways, and then Chelsea score again, and they have their own VAR offsides goal kind of ruled off. But and it is more obvious, but this is close. And again, Liverpool are lucky here, and it's caused by their own problems. So McAllister tries to play a ball to the central forward, who is Jota, to kind of settle it, and he has a heavy touch kind of pass. I don't know if he has a bad touch or maybe he is trying to pass, but it doesn't come off, and Gakpo can't control it. This isn't on Gakpo in my opinion. This is a bad touch by Jota. But to be honest, Gakpo isn't at fault because he's left the the left midfield area to be next to Jota. And once Chelsea win the ball back, where do they go? They immediately go to the space where Gakpo is supposed to be. And then from there, that's where the trouble happens. Sterling gets the ball and does well to hold on to it, being pressed by Robinson, but Robinson doesn't want to follow him all the way upfield. Sterling knows that. And so Sterling runs backwards, Robinson kind of lays off, and then Sterling immediately finds Enzo kind of next to him, who again, Enzo is 8 yards in front of Gakpo. So this is a problem. And then Enzo is kind of a wizard at rolling the ball, basically freezing Liverpool to kind of lose track of where everyone is, and does a beautiful kind of slip square pass. That ends up kind of beating past everyone that finds Ben Chilwell. Then Ben Chilwell does a really good job 1v1 beating Allison. But his shoulder is offsides as well. This is a little bit more obvious than the Salah one, but to be honest, maybe both could have. No, this is a little bit more honest. But this is close. This is close to counting, and maybe it should have counted because Liverpool needed to be punished by how they were playing. And then that basically ended up kind of being the goals. There was a big chance at the end of the first half for Chelsea in Jackson. So this is the one that Reece James and Sterling just kind of bully Robinson and Gakpo again. And it's a simple just kind of 1-2 where James passes it to Sterling, and then who is unmarked by Gakpo. And then James just makes a run afterwards for Sterling to feed him the ball back. Robinson can't keep up. And my issues with Robinson, I thought, were more of being out of position. In this game, he was in position, and just Sterling and James were able to just kind of beat him 1v1 when Robinson should have been in a set defense. That to me was troubling. My halftime thoughts were I felt like it was an even game. Liverpool started off, better in the first 20 minutes. It felt like they exploded out of the gates. But to be fair, that's been the trend for Klopp teams in a lot of big games lately. You can go back to the Champions League. You can go back to even in the cups that they ended up winning. Beating Chelsea. Beating when they won the FA Cup and when they won the EFL Cup. It's been just Liverpool just exploding out of a cannon. And then when if you aren't able to uh, capitalize on that, and they were able to get one goal here, but they weren't able to add to that. Eventually all that high energy can kind of dip a little bit, and that's if a team can withstand the first wave of Liverpool. It seems they can stay in the game and kind of hold on to it, and even grab hold on to it. And that's basically what we saw happen in the second half for Chelsea because they dominated the ball in the second half. I mean, both teams did look vulnerable on transitions. Is worth kind of saying that as well. But really, the main thing was Chelsea's wingbacks were taking advantage of Liverpool's kind of risky, narrow defensive shape. And so Liverpool's Liverpool's shape out of possession, what I thought was, or in possession, was an absolute mess when Liverpool lost the ball. So Trent's playing centrally. And that means if any time Chelsea win the ball back, there's space for any kind of ball over the top that Konate has to defend out wide. So I mean, Chilwell was having fun on that side, and then on the other side, Gakpo didn't understand who to mark in midfield on his side, and so that allowed Enzo, Sterling, and James to just feast off each other down that side, and it gave Robinson fits 2v1 fits the entire game, and it was not good. Liverpool allowed Chelsea to play exactly how they want to play. They like getting James and Chilwell involved in their attack. They like using spaces down the wings. They played with wingbacks. And it shouldn't be that surprising. I know it was surprising to see them start with a back three because it's Pochettino. He's been known to kind of play more of a 4-2-3-1, a 4-4-4, 4-2-4. And we basically saw what Tuchel had been playing under Chelsea, and so it is what it is. I mean, the second half notes, not a ton happened. I mean, Van Dijk had an outrageous effort that would nearly went in. Jackson did handle the ball, and it wasn't a PK. I can kind of see both sides to that. And then Salah was subbed off for the 17-year-old that I spoke about last week in Ben Doak, and Salah did not enjoy that. And then Sanchez nearly gives the game away. So Robert Sanchez didn't have a ton to do. I didn't necessarily think he had the worst debut, but this nearly ended up costing him because it's a really poor ball that basically finds Alexis McAllister. Alexis McAllister maybe doesn't have the best touch, but he finds Nunes. That's what you need to do. Nunes has since come on for Jota, and Nunes can't keep his first touch. Kind of just he can't control it. If it's Gakpo in this position, I think it's a goal. Jota, maybe it's a goal as well. And Firmino, it definitely would have been a goal. I mean, this is kind of the critique with a little bit with Nunes, why he can't necessarily play forward by himself. It's that hold up and link up ability. Just it seems like the touch just isn't always there. And it's unfortunate. And then Nunes did have a chance to win it late with a long deflection shot. Basically, it beats Sanchez, but it does kind of go over the bar just barely. And then Allison had to be here late as well. Liverpool had a corner kick. It looked like, oh, maybe Liverpool can steal this, and then it looked like Chelsea was about to steal it. And Chelsea was through. It looked like on the counter, I think Jackson was through, and then Allison just had an incredible 1v1 save again, just kind of saving their skin. I mean, that was really the thought of the game. It was two games in one. I mean, Chelsea made a statement in the second half though. But I think my first take in the beginning was, oh man, this showcased the lack of a DM to win the ball back. But Alexis did a good job, to be honest. As good a job as you can maybe ask him for. He won the ball back 7 times. He didn't really turn it over. I didn't really think Chelsea exploited him through the middle that often. There was maybe one time when Enzo got the better of him. But all the danger was really happening on the wing. So I don't necessarily think that was the issue. I think the shape was wrong. I think the pressing structure was significantly off. Another problem I saw was Jota couldn't hold on to the ball when Liverpool needed him to. And I love him. I mentioned it last week. I kind of wanted him to play over Nunes. I think now I'd probably actually would play Gakpo through the middle. And what I would maybe do is if Diaz, maybe try Diaz, but Diaz can sometimes be kind of hit and miss as well. He scored a great goal here. But I would maybe try to do Jota on the left side to kind of cut in and kind of be like kind of an inside striker. because it just Jota. I love him to death, but it did feel like this wasn't really the game for him, where the game was just absolutely chaotic. Maybe actually Nunes would have it made sense because the game was just end to end chaos, and you needed to be physical. Chelsea were being really really tight anytime someone was trying to turn on the ball, and Liverpool can hold on to it. And another thing too is we'll get to the stats. Liverpool's possession and passing numbers were eye-openingly bad. I mean, the passing decisions in the second half were horrible. Some of it was Chelsea's doing, but pressing them into mistakes, but not really. Liverpool were really just trying to go direct and hit home run long balls, and it wasn't coming off. They didn't keep enough control of the ball, and I thought this was a Henderson problem. I thought this problem would have been addressed by just kind of changing personnel. And no, Trent did the same thing this game. I think he was 2 for 11 in long balls, and it was bad. I mean, we'll get to the stats. Chelsea was 1.35 for XG, Liverpool 1.23. Chelsea 10 shots and 4 on target. Liverpool 13 shots and only 1 on target. But Chelsea did have 5 big missed chances, or five big chances. Um, and then possession was 65 to 35. Chelsea had 610 passes though, 87% accuracy. Liverpool 301. And that's a low passing number under Klopp. And I think maybe something that we saw last season as well was anytime that Thiago was missing games, their passing showed up, at least for versus the big boys. And so that I think the idea is maybe to hold on to him now. I'm more in favor of that, especially after seeing this. So maybe get a DM, maybe try Thiago there, maybe try Alexis a little bit more advanced. Maybe that's kind of a way to kind of fix this a little bit. Again, I mentioned it last week. I didn't really like the 3-2-2-3 structure. We didn't really see that this game. It really was mostly Trent ended up kind of playing kind of centrally a little bit. He was inverted, but Robinson really did kind of play as a regular fullback, and it still didn't really work out. So to get started with Liverpool, it is egg on my face because I said I wanted Gakpo in midfield last week. I wanted Jota as striker, and I got what I wanted, and it did not work. So I mean, Gakpo in midfield. I think what's interesting is offensively, it definitely you can see where it works. But yeah, defensively, it was a mess. He didn't seem to understand his role in the counter press, his role to track runners, and it was leaving Robinson to dry. It seemed like Diaz wasn't really doing the best to come back either. The Liverpool out of possession was a mess. I mean, we mentioned it last week how it's going to be a bit of a transition year. You have new personnel that's come in. There's going to be talks after missing out on Caicedo. They're going to try to sign some kind of DM to come in, and you imagine that's probably going to take some time to get used to the style as well. So yeah, it's going to be kind of up and down season. You imagine. I mean, for the defensive take, the issue really was Trent and Robinson just forgetting that Ben Chilwell and Reece James exist. And when they play, they usually Chelsea plays well. And they dominated Chelsea, to be honest. And if it wasn't for Alisson, Kanate, and Virgil, this could have gotten ugly, to be honest. I mean, Alisson, the one positive I have is Alisson kept us from being embarrassing, and Virgil and Kanate were incredible at just kind of putting out as many fires as possible as they could. I mean, Chelsea was still able to breach them and still able to force Alisson into working, but it could have been a lot worse. And I mean, for the negatives, the energy spent to win the ball back was not good. It was disorganized chaos. It didn't seem like Liverpool in the past have had like waves of when they're of the press. So when one wave hits, you have another one immediately following, and that way there's always pressure on the ball. And this maybe you had like one wave, maybe it was half-hearted, maybe it wasn't like working as a line, and the spaces and gaps were way too open for Chelsea. And I think another problem here is one way to kind of hold on to the ball isn't just to win it back a lot. City, Brighton, and Arsenal, and in many respects, have found that sweet spot of just being really good out of possession, but not really overworking the legs. But another thing too is their secret is just keeping the ball in early phase buildup, where you force the other team to run and tire their legs out as well. You basically control the tempo of the game if you can do that. Liverpool haven't really been able to do that. You have this heavy metal stuff. Go direct a lot. Find Salah, who's good at holding the ball up. You used to have Mane, who's really good at holding the ball up as well. Firmino was underrated at that as well. And you don't necessarily you don't have two of those players anymore, and it is different. So I don't know. It's only one game, but it does feel like what I said last week kind of showed up again. Klopp's stuck on playing two systems at once. Um, and it seems he's playing a number of players now that in roles that aren't really natural to them. So that you can imagine there's going to be growing pains. I do think for the most part Chelsea were good. So what the team that he played, or the 11 that played, or that started, I think is good enough to at least handle a decent majority of the teams in the league. So just it's not going to lead to any kind of silverware or anything. But the more I see it, the more or less I like Trent in an inverted midfield role. If you want to play him as in the midfield, that's fine. I'd be okay with that. But I think what you're doing is you're making it that's too much room and cover for Kanate to do out in the wide area and in the middle. Game week to game week, I think you're going to see Kanate suffer some kind of muscle injury by overextending himself if that's not fixed. I hate it. You don't see other teams being nearly as frantic defensively as Liverpool have been, and then Andrew Robinson has his own issues. And it wasn't just it was just not being able to handle James and Sterling running past him, and it's possible he's gotten burned out over the years by running as much as he has. We've seen that happen. We've seen that happen to the legs in a number of players. We saw it happen with Mane, with Gini Wijnaldum, with Henderson. It's possible it's starting to affect Robinson, and it sucks. He's been one of my favorite players in the Klopp era. But the signs are starting to show. So maybe the idea is try to find a way to maybe play insert Samikas more this season, or try to find someone else. Try to get in. I know Inacio has a release clause. Maybe try to trigger that, and maybe think to the idea of maybe trying to move Robinson more to a squad player this season, to at least give him some kind of rest for his legs. And he plays a lot of games because he captained Scotland as well, which doesn't help. And Scotland, I think, he's going to try to qualify for Euros. So it's only going to get worse. And then this is an important window to kind of get right. I mean, the Caicedo news was absolutely wild. It made me wonder if there's a Tchouaméni conspiracy. Why have you waited this long to if you had $100 million to at least act on that? Why did you wait until Mbappe basically said he's staying at PSG? That was weird to me. But if you have $100 million to play with, there's Florentino Luis at Benfica. There's Manu Kone that they have been linked to at Gladbach. Kefram Turam isn't really a defensive midfielder himself. He's more of a six/hybrid. But he'd just be a lot of fun. He's got energy for days. He can make recovery runs. Yusuf Fofana of Monaco is still there. Zubimendi is an interesting player at Sociedad. And I mentioned Sinacio as kind of at least kind of a defensive option, which they can maybe look at as well. I'm kind of lost for words a little bit, especially with the Caicedo drama, because it's one thing to go from getting terms agreed to just kind of being a little bit off, then making a bid, him agreeing to it, and then just kind of the agent kind of holding you hostage. And then what sucks here is because they've done this, it looks like they've lost Roman Lavia as well. And I would have been fine with Lavia. To be honest, he's 19, but he showed at Southampton he can be quality. And so I think it was botched. It was really poorly done. And I think my reaction really to seeing all this is at least, hey, there is some money here to do something here. One name I haven't mentioned is Decore, Czech Decore of Crystal Palace. And I think I saw last week that maybe they were linked, or they inquired about Curtis Jones. So I don't know if that is maybe in the cards. I think Palace is going to ask for a ransom for him if that is what the club tries to do. But that's your own fault. Not only have you waited this long, you've announced to everyone that you have $100 million to spend, and everyone knows you're going to be desperate. So that whatever you maybe could have gotten for a decent fee, maybe back in June or July, you're going to have to pay 20 or 30 million more, just in general. So that's the club's own fault. But at the same time, you need to do this, and you haven't done this in the past. Because getting Champions League, why don't if you spend 20, 30 million extra, that's going to suck now, but if you get back into the Champions League, you'll get that back and more so. But if you miss Champions League again, it's going to be just harder and harder to keep up. Um, and so, I mean, Maxis Kakare is there. I mentioned Andre of Fluminense. And then there's a youngster in Argentina that's apparently caught some eye as well. I don't know his name. Ronaldo, I think Ronaldo. But I think you need to start taking some risk here. Not just go for prem proven clubs. I remember not everyone knew who Firmino was when he came from Hoffenheim. People weren't really excited about Gini Wijnaldum coming from Newcastle. Robinson came from Hull City. So there needs to be a rethink of how they've done transfer business. Um, and it's not just DM. They have issues at center back or at least left center back or in a three or maybe in fullback. So they you need to look at something like that, and not just to kind of replace Robinson. If something happens to Konate or Virgil van Dijk, it's Matip, Gomez, or Nat Phillips for depth. And I don't necessarily know if that's necessarily great. You could actually try Gomez as one of the center backs. But after that, if something again, if you try to play three center backs, if something happens to Matip and Nat Phillips, uh, or if something happens to Konate and Virgil van Dijk, you just have Matip and Nat Phillips, and that is not good enough depth to withstand a season. But I mentioned kind of a fun idea, and the fun one is just go all FIFA lineup. You've got this hundred and some million to spend. Madrid needs some help. There are two names thrown out. One was Tchouaméni. The other one was Fede Valverde. And so if he's available, go out and get him. It improves that right side immediately on the ball. Szoboszlai can play on the left side. I think he prefers playing on the left side and cutting onto his right foot. I think this fixes a lot of issues in possession. He's a good presser as well. He can track runners defensively. He can cover a job for Trent. He's played right back for Real Madrid. Actually, he did an amazing job versus Liverpool in a Champions League game. So it's maybe you can kind of do with that. Maybe stick with Mac and McAllister as a six. Pirlo has played as a six. You don't have to be a physical monster that's 6'2". Andre that's mentioned is like 5'9". You just need to be good with your body. You need to recognize when to go to ground, and you need to recognize basically the position. You need to understand what holding is, what the job requires, like being a holder, being able to get the ball on the turn, be an outlet for center backs when you're building in possession. Just kind of things like that. So I didn't think McAllister was the issue. Even though they are going to look to get to a six, the only thing is you could try to play McAllister further up to help you out if you could get that. But I do think the owners have screwed up again. I miss Michael Edwards, obviously. This little experiment has kind of highlighted that. They finally have a sporting director that's able to spend some money, and he's gone out and made an absolute mess of things. He did well to bring in Szoboszlai, but he paid a release clause. And yeah, I mean, it's not great. And then at least to focusing on this game, the lack of possession was jarring, and that really was the problem. So we'll move on to Chelsea. Some positives I have is Enzo. It's probably Enzo's best game that he's played. Gallagher played well as well. He's probably hurt most by the Lavia news. Colwell and Diassi debuts I thought did okay. I mean, Diassi scored, but to be honest, he didn't do his best job of covering for Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz actually got the better of him a little bit. Colwell did get beaten by Salah, but he started after that. I thought Jackson's debut went well, and then Reece James and Chilwell. Chelsea had basically looked better, or looked a strong team when both of them have been fit and able to go. And really, kind of the downfall of Tuchel, even Potter, has begun when Reece James has been injured, hasn't been able to go, or Chilwell's been injured, hasn't been able to go. And then I thought when Mudryk came on, he looked bright. He only had a little cameo, but I thought he did better than Carly Chukwuemeka. And then the kind of a negative was again, I didn't think Carney had his best game, and Sanchez. I thought Sanchez was kind of struggling. At least for debate topics, Chelsea have spent like 900 million over 3 transfers. I don't know how this can continue happening. But to focus on the football, Pochettino already is having effect. Um, you're seeing a final ball there in this game that just wasn't there, under Potter. Enzo has really starred. It wasn't just the side to side stuff. Jackson being there instead of like a Yao Felix or Havertz is definitely helped them. Jackson's running is making it so much harder. He's such a threat, and he's not just running in the middle. He'll go out wide as well if the space is there, and that is just making it so much harder to mark. And that's creating, it's changing Liverpool's back line on who to mark and who to cover. And Enzo was enjoying himself. Yeah, he was enjoying in freedom. Not when Liverpool weren't able to press him, he was able to look up and able to play some really nice passes to feet, and it was dangerous. So we'll probably look to see more of that. Enzo looked like the $120 million player that they bought last February, because he hasn't had the best start to his EPL career. But I keep saying Liverpool didn't press him. Last year, he was fantastic when being pressed. I think under pressure, it was only him and Rodri that were kind of the two best players under pressure at keeping the ball. So Chelsea's in midfield could possibly be Enzo, Roman Lavia, and Moises Caicedo. And so I don't really know what to think of them. It's a lot of it is going to rest on Jackson being able to finish, but Chelsea have spent a boatload, and but they are going to be they're definitely going to be better than last year, and that midfield is going to be really strong if that is the midfield three. I have a feeling that's the reason why they've done this. I don't think they're going to just play in a pivot. So maybe that means more kind of work for Reece James and Chilwell to kind of be as fullbacks instead. But you've got three guys that can. They aren't necessarily limited offensively. Maybe you'd even see Pochettino ask them to do a little bit more with the ball. But I mean, all three are going to be incredible in possession. So you're not going to turn them over, and all three, at least maybe not for Enzo. Enzo maybe will be a little bit more of a playmaker. Roman Lavia and Caicedo are going to be beasts at winning the ball back. So there's a lot of optimism for if you're a Chelsea fan, especially after that first game. And it was only a draw, but you come away being the more happy side of the two. And so we'll move on to Man City and Burnley and see how we're doing for time. Could be a lot worse. Actually, it could be a lot better. So this one ends 3-0, goals from Holland again, and then Rodri. It kind of like as the game went on, the Man City shape was weird. So it was like a 3-2-4-1 essentially. So basically a three at the back with kind of Rico Lewis in midfield, kind of next to Rodri. But as the game went on, this position changed. And Foden was finding himself there. Bernardo Silva was as well. Kovacic, when he came on for De Bruyne, was kind of playing there at times as well. And Kovacic was much better this game, to be fair. He doesn't offer what Gundogan did in possession, but on the flip side, it looks like he can run back and close off counters, and he can even play as a makeshift fullback if that's required. It looks like it's going to make City when he plays. It's going to be harder to score on City. He'll definitely be fantastic in transitions. You imagine, and then with Burnley went with a kind of a 5-4-1, and it was this game maybe went kind of what you would expect. I do think the score line is generous, but we'll get to that. I mean, there's a reason. I mean, Man City do kind of get an early goal from Holland. It's a short corner kick and possessions recycled. Then Kevin De Bruyne sends a really good ball over the top that finds Rodri, and Rodri wins the first header, and then the goal finds Holland to meet on the end of it. And then there's a chance that Kevin De Bruyne also creates. He has a really good cross into the box, and the ball finds Holland, and it looks like Bernardo Silva, or it looks like Holland's about to get onto it, and Holland takes the ball off Bernardo Silva's head. Silva's probably scoring there, but Burnley stayed in the game and grew a couple chances. First from Kolieshu, and then Mudani, who had a really nice turn on the ball here, and he forced Ederson to make a save. I mean, the ball is hit right to Adam, but he does well to create a chance. But one thing that I was noticing is Burnley were able to turn City over a little bit. I didn't think Ake and Akanji were necessarily that great in possession. It wasn't the same thing that we saw versus Arsenal. Another thing that was interesting was Man City's build-up shape was different. Kyle Walker started a little higher on the wing, Akanji and Ake were kind of playing out wide. Rodri was almost kind of the central DM, to force that fake back three. And then Rico Lewis was really tucked into midfield. And then really the change happened with the Kevin De Bruyne getting a hamstring injury, and it looked tight for Arsenal. Um, and this changes Man City a lot, which we're going to get into. And then a couple chances for Burnley again. There's a really good recovery by Rodri to stop a 1v1. It looked like Burnley were going to score here, and then there was a chance for Foster. So Burnley did have a few chances in the first half where they were able to force City into a couple sloppy mistakes. It's Rodri of all people that plays a bad pass. Foster jumps on it, and then he beats Walker down the wing, and then it gets past Akanji, who goes diving in and misses, and then Kovacic gets back in position, but is beaten by Foster cutting inside, and he tries an ambitious curler. It doesn't come off, but it is close, and it is interesting. Burnley were able to force City into a couple turnovers. City were not, um, uh, I guess Man City-esque. This game is maybe the best way to put it, but. We're basically around like the 30th minute. They did kind of change a little bit. I mean, they did have a 1 goal lead. It seemed like Bernardo Silva just stopped playing a possession. So he was popping up everywhere to be an extra man, and it was allowing Walker kind of space so Bernardo Silva was supposed to be like the right winger technically, and what he was completely leaving that area and to go maybe in the left midfield or to go centrally. And basically, what that just left an entire channel for Walker to make runs if he wanted to, and that's basically what ended up happening. So we'll get to the second goal, and it's an incredible finish by Haaland. But this is what I'm talking about. So Rodri gets the ball and then finds a pass that splits two Burnley guys kind of running at him, and it goes to Phil Foden unmarked. And Foden is supposed to be City's left winger, so he's on the right side here, and he receives the ball on the right hash and then kind of Burnley's final third. And then next to Rodri, when this pass is made, is Bernardo Silva, City's quote-unquote right winger. And the guy that's occupying the wing for City is Rico Lewis, the quote-unquote fullback. And then Foden gets the ball from Rodri and then slips a really nice through ball to Kyle Walker. Kyle Walker has that whole channel to make that run if he wants, and he does it. And he basically he makes that run, and then he hits the cross that creates the danger. And then as Walker receives the ball, you see everyone on Burnley running back and worried about Haaland. And everyone loses track of Alvarez, who basically shadows Haaland. And then Walker's ball finds Alvarez, and then Alvarez takes a nice first touch to control the ball. And then instead of shooting, he leaves it to Haaland. And Haaland has a world-class strike to find the net, gives Trafford absolutely no chance. But the halftime thoughts were, Burnley played well. They had a decent hold in the game for that middle stretch of it. But City were crazy clinical, and they didn't create a lot of chances, but they did enough to find Haaland in the box basically 2 times, and that's all it took to be down 2-0. I did think it was interesting that Bernardo and Foden were not playing a possession. They were just kind of go wherever you can be an extra man to basically kind of keep the ball. And when City have a lead, that makes it impossible to get the ball off them, and basically what we saw. That is what we saw in the second half. Just City's ball hogging really took the toll on Burnley's legs. It's different when City have a lead playing against them, and not necessarily. Burnley tried to maybe out City at their game a little bit. It didn't really work. They did try to play super defensively without the ball to start, and it was in the first half they were able to get a couple chances and they were able to break a little bit, just not able to have any of that finish quality. They have missed a couple. They've lost a couple really big players for them in Nathan Tella and Ian Matson. And I think maybe that could be. I don't know if they're going to try to maybe go to Chelsea to try to get Matson off them. But that is maybe a little concern here. And then we'll kind of get to a couple chances for City, and then the goal. The first one comes to Rodri, and the only reason why I want to highlight this is Rodri has a long shot and Trafford can only parry out of bounds. But the thing to notice here is Rodri's shot comes from Man City being able to just send Haaland kind of free on his own, taking a bit of trying a long run, kind of found by Ederson. Haaland's touch is kind of, he lets him down a little bit, and Burnley are able to kind of stop the direct play by City, but they gave a ball away, and that's where Rodri's kind of strike comes from. But the thing that's different here is they have City has like 8 guys or whatever in the half, in their own half, kind of looking for the ball. And I think the idea is to kind of play short and build up again. And Ederson decides to try a long ball that ends up finding Holland's boots. And it's another example of how hard it's going to be for teams to mark City on goal kicks, especially if City have a lead, because they can play this direct ball or they can play short, and beat you either way. And then we'll get to the goal, and it's another instance that comes from Man City being direct and doing a long ball to Holland to chase, and he does win the ball. And not only that, he draws a dangerous free kick, and then it's a really good delivery in the box. Burnley can't clear it, and Rodri smashes it in. And then at the end, there's a red card for Burnley. Walker's actually really lucky to be able to walk away from this because this was pretty bad. I mean, the leg is out and from behind, and it catches Walker high, and it could have been another big injury for Man City. Um, I mean, the thoughts of the game was this was I was a little concerned kind of coming into the after. Didn't necessarily do this last year. I was a little more hedging because Holland didn't have his best Community Shield game versus Liverpool, and he didn't really do the same versus Arsenal. And I was kind of wondering, well, how is this going to fit? And all he did is shut up critics by scoring 2 goals. But that said, not having Kevin De Bruyne, I think, is going to make them different, and I'll get to that. But so I think there are 2 ways to maybe look at this. It's a different City team that played Arsenal, a different lineup, and I think they played with different tactics. Especially in the second half, it was funny how most of their better chances came when Addison decided to be direct to Holland. And the funny thing about that is it looks like Pep was asked a little bit towards the end of the at least at the first half. Holland and him were kind of arguing at it with each other, and Pep was asked about it after the game, and he admitted that Holland wanted kind of that ball to play directly to him a little bit more. And basically Pep was like, "We don't do that here." And in the second half, that basically is what they end up doing. Though it was Ederson doing it, not necessarily a midfielder. But I think the loss of Kevin De Bruyne is going to affect them. They weren't nearly as creative in open play, and they're incredible at keeping the ball. But it is worth saying, 2 goals came from free kicks or corner kicks. And it's interesting. They're now linked to Lucas Paqueta. I think Jeremy Doku of Rennes, who he ended up. He's a dribble monster. So he's a lot of fun. He'll be. It'll if he plays, it'll be a different City team than what we've seen from them. Because he's not going to be a guy that just kind of gets the ball on the wing and he's just his role is just kind of either keep wide or to recycle possession. He's going to try to take people 1v1. So that could be exciting to see. But as we'll get to the stats, it was Burnley 0.33 for XG, City over 2. Shots was six shots and then 1 on target for Burnley. City were 17 and 8, 3 big chances for City. Possessions probably what you would expect, and passes are probably what you expect. City with 634, 90% accuracy. Burnley with 290. I think it's interesting. A number of teams had over 600 passes. Now it used to be 500. Now it's 6. And I think the way that teams are focusing more on first phase buildup, we're going to see higher passing numbers than what we're used to. So it's going to maybe skew this a little bit. I think the takes from Man City I have was Bernardo's role was crazy in this game because he wasn't really playing a position. I think when you watch City more, it seems like the main idea that Pep's concerned about though is stopping teams successfully being able to counter on them. So when City lose the ball, they don't. I mean, that's maybe why Pep doesn't want players to take his chances. Maybe why Pep doesn't want long balls over the top for Haaland to chase onto because you're giving the ball away. And maybe Pep's been burned too many times because it seems like Gvardiol's been brought in to stop that. It looks like Kovacic. The idea isn't necessarily to replace him with Gundogan. The idea is to give them more steel defensively. That is going to make them better at the back. But what do you do with Kevin De Bruyne? That is a serious thing. And so it's not necessarily a negative, but it's a. I think this is where Haaland maybe excels, where Haaland likes getting the ball in behind and be able to beat people on the shoulder. And he scores 2 wonderful goals here. But is he going to enjoy a lot of games where he's almost like a decoy? I think it's possible you could see his numbers suffer, especially with someone like Kevin De Bruyne not being able to pick him out. Sometimes that is kind of the idea when it's not necessarily working. Someone just kind of to try a Hail Mary ball and it comes off. And so the injury is serious. And especially if he's re-aggravated it. So what do you do without him? Imagine the creative responsibilities will fall to either Foden or Alvarez or Bernardo Silva. Um, but no one in that City team has the delivery or eye for a through ball like Kevin De Bruyne has. One player that maybe does is Cancelo, but Pep doesn't seem to like him. He's moved on from him. So watching them in possession was wild. It was nearly impossible to figure out what positions a couple people were playing, like I've mentioned. But as we saw, Sunday with Spurs, it's going to be impossible to man mark this team when they play this way. And so, because Foden and Bernardo Silva were running on opposite sides of the field. Foden wasn't necessarily going back to even to playing defense. Bernardo Silva was at times to help with kind of possession to get keep those numbers in their advantage. And then so it was and anytime that Burnley tried to like kind of press Man City, they always had an extra man, and so they weren't able to win it back, and that really did tire the legs out. But another reason why it maybe felt like a different City side is because of Kanji and Ake played instead of Stones and Ruben Diaz. And they weren't. They were definitely not nearly as good passing, in my opinion. There was a lot more side to side stuff. Maybe that was kind of the reason why they were giving the ball away, and Burnley were actually having some chances in that first half, is because a lot of those mistakes were coming from them. So that was maybe something to watch. I think, especially Akanji, but maybe Ake as well. They were both more comfortable when they're playing more out wide than necessarily at center back. So that's maybe something to follow. And then. And they've got a big game this Saturday versus Newcastle. But before that, they also have a Super Cup versus Sevilla. So, and it's a team they dominated a year ago in the Champions League group stage. So, and that was La Tigre, Sevilla, which funny enough. But how much energy does Pep do for this game? How much does he care? Because he does have this big game versus Newcastle on Saturday. So does he play Holland? Does he maybe sit him after the first half? We'll have to see about that. And for Burnley, I do think the 3-0 is harsh, because 2 goals kind of just came from set pieces, and they're beaten from a wonder strike. So there is some positive to be, if you're a Burnley fan, I think you can kind of say that. The first game being City, and they were competitive, much more competitive than they were in the FA game. And they did have some moments, but yeah, again, by the 55th minute, the legs were shot. But I think aside from the 3 goals conceded, I mean, the fans misbehaved. That's worth saying as well. There was some kind of lighter that ended up hitting Rico Lewis. But I do think the losses of Matson and Tella showed up here. They were sharp on the wings. They were sharp at getting. They looked like they had pace, but they didn't have much spark as far as 1v1 ability. So you do wonder where the goals are going to come from here. Is Wanghorst in the cards for Vincent Company? We'll have to see. And then another thing to say is a lot of new players started this game, and it's Sanderberg, I think, was signed like 3 days before this game even started. I think Company played like 5 guys getting their debut. So it's a lot of guys playing, a new team, playing in a different maybe system setup. That could take some time to kind of get used to and adapt. And so this isn't maybe kind of the finished product we're going to see from Burnley, but especially the pressing structure. Whose role is what without the ball. Who's responsible to mark who. But it also could be knowing what kind of passes to play or what kind of run certain guys like. So. It's simple stuff like that, but it can show up. Especially it'll show up for City. So I think this is kind of a write off for Burnley, but it does suck that you aren't able to win your first game at home. So but it is it's not the championship anymore. We'll see how they rebound, and then we'll get to Arsenal and Forest. Arsenal do win 2-1, goal from Nketiah, and then Saka with an amazing strike. And then right when it looked like Forrest were just completely out of the game, Keith Cooper did make a couple of changes, brought on Anthony Alenga and brought on Taiwo Awani. And Awani saved them actually last season. Maybe the reason why they ended up staying up. They had a couple big performances by Morgan Gibbs-White, but it was also Awani. Awani was able to score, I think, like 6 or 7 goals for his last like 8 appearances for them. And he's able to come on as a second half sub and is able to score here as well. It was interesting to see, hey, why wasn't this guy started? Because Forrest offered really absolutely nothing. I mean, we'll get to Arsenal's lineup. It was interesting to see what Arteta did, because Arteta also did something that he didn't do versus Man City. He played Partey as kind of a right back, but he was really in midfield at times. White, Saliba, and Timber to make up the rest of the back line. Then it was Odegaard, Rice, and Havertz. Havertz was played in midfield instead of at the forward spot, and then Nketiah was one that led the line. It was interesting because I said last week I didn't know if Arteta was going to trust Nketiah, but Havertz did have a shot last week versus Man City and blew a couple chances. And I think that maybe it was in the back of Arteta's head. And to be fair, Nketiah does end up getting the big goal for them to get that first goal. So maybe we'll see him get a couple more chances. Maybe he'll be trusted a little bit more because other than that, they don't really have an option at the minute. And then with Forrest basically played a 3-4-3 with Brendan Johnson as striker. So they tried Johnson instead of Awani. And I guess one thing to kind of say was Matt Turner did get his start. I was wondering why he was joining Forrest with Keylor Navas, and apparently Navas was only on loan. So Matt Turner maybe is going to be the starter for them. You lose here, and maybe the Saka shot wasn't necessarily kind, but I don't think there's anything he can do with that. That's a wonder goal. Matt Turner, I did think made a few pretty good saves, but it's gonna be rough. Playing for Forest because they play so defensively without the ball. You imagine it's going to be a lot of teams that have the ball in their final third, and they're able to just kind of pick their spots, pick where they want to cross the ball in, and you gotta imagine there'd be a lot of shots maybe deflected to go out of bounds, so you're gonna face a lot of corner kicks. I don't think it's gonna necessarily be a lot of fun for Turner, unfortunately. But I did think it was a mistake to not start Awani because there was a chance for Brendan Johnson. It was maybe the really the only chance they had until Cooper made his subs. Arsenal were asleep here. Johnson gets in behind, he gets on goal. I think Ramsdale makes a mistake coming out as far as he does. But maybe the flip side of that is maybe that surprised Johnson that Ramsdale was able to come out as far as he did, and instead of trying to go past him, he tries to chip the ball over the net, and it's completely off. I think it's also wide as well. Just not the composure you needed. I mean, the first 15 minutes, Arsenal dominated the ball, which is what you would expect, but they didn't really test Turner. I thought what was interesting is Forest were not really high pressing, but they were tight at any time Arsenal were reaching their half of the field. Um, Arsenal were not really doing well to kind of get the ball on the turn. Um, I thought it was also interesting how it looked like Timber was basically as a third center back in possession. He wasn't in midfield. He wasn't doing the Zinchenko role this time. Party was more kind of doing that. And what that was kind of allowing is Party would start on the wing and then cutting side. And that would maybe leave some space a little bit for Odegaard or Saka to kind of run into either to make a run forward or to come into a kind of a channel here. But Arsenal was sloppy, I thought, in that first half. There was little creativity. I thought that shots were heavy. I thought the ball was moving slow. And I think for Forest, it was a bit of a reversal from last week, where City were experiencing what Man City did to them, where the center backs had all this ball at the halfway line, and just Forest didn't care when Arsenal had it. But Arsenal were able to get the break there with Nketiah. So finally, someone takes a defender on, and it comes from a corner kick. So Arsenal kind of recycle possession from the first ball not working, and then Martinelli just drags defenders out of possession and then spins another. It's a fantastic play by Martinelli. I don't even know if he means to spin and lose the ball. It almost looks like he tries to pass this to Nketiah, which is a wild. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Why not? And he finds Nketiah in the box, and he does a good job to kind of fate, take a touch, and then get the shot off before someone's able to block it. And I think it does take a deflection, and that's the reason why Matt Turner is beaten here. Matt Turner maybe could have done better, but there's a deflection right in front of him. So, uh, but this was big. The goal forced Forest to kind of change the strategy a little bit. Now they had to push numbers forward to at least try to win the ball back a little bit more. Uh, and it was good for Nketiah. Because he didn't get a lot of game time versus Community Shield, didn't think he necessarily had this best preseason. And given what Arsenal have dealing with injuries with issues, I don't think Havertz has necessarily worked out when he's gotten to play up top. This is maybe a time for him to kind of claim that position if he wants it. So big for Nketiah, and then we'll get to the second goal with Saka. And it's just what a hit. But the instance of this goal comes from another recycled corner kick. So it's a 1-0 goal from Saka. But Arsenal get the ball, and Arsenal able to kind of recycle possession, and then Saka gets the ball to him, and he takes a few touches to get more centrally, and then just absolutely he picks his spot and just arrows the ball into the net from basically the top of the box, with his left foot kind of flying it past Turner. And then we get to halftime, and Forrest I thought had been disgraceful. They set up to play with 11 men behind the ball, and maybe it worked out for them last May. So that was something maybe Arsenal were kind of thinking about. But Arsenal also didn't have Declan Rice and Saliba and Timber in that game. And then they also didn't have Martinelli, if you remember. And also Arsenal didn't start Nketiah last May. I remember that being a thing. So and what's interesting is especially after that second goal, Arsenal did start to look better. Saka, the movement I thought improved. Saka and Odegaard were starting to play one-touch football with each other. Ben White was starting to make some overlap runs. They were starting to do a little bit better. And then we'll get to kind of I don't want to say this changed the game, but this was a highlight. Is Timber right before the first half? He went in for a challenge, and it was at least it was contact. So I guess you can say that it wasn't no contact. But he goes for a challenge, and his knee kind of twists a little bit. He's able to continue on, and then he comes off to start the second half, and he can only go for like maybe a minute, and then he's immediately having to he's stretchered off, and it looks like it's come out that it is Arsenal do think it's going to be serious. So I don't know what that means. That could be a massive loss, because one, you probably figured Zinchenko is going to play there anyways, but it's just good to have depth. When Tommy also came on, it wasn't nearly the same. He didn't nearly look as good in possession, and I thought Forrest kind of benefited a little bit from that. Um, and then another thing that happened was Forrest get the goal, and what happened was it's an incredible break by this also comes from a Arsenal corner kick, which funny enough. So Lanka is able to kind of get the ball, and he runs down the wing, beating everyone after the corner kick, and then he squares the ball to find Awani. But Awani starts this move. This is incredible by him. So he gets the ball. I think he's first to the ball, and he's basically 80 yards away from Arsenal's goal. And then he passes it to Elanga, and then sprints all the way upfield, beating just absolutely everyone. And then what he does is he almost kind of fakes like he's going to cut towards the center of the goal, and then immediately cuts to get in front of Ben White just at the last second. So it's clever movement at the very end. Awani showed a pace that I didn't realize he has. And he did. He put some chances away, a couple big chances for them last season. So something for Forest fans to be hopeful about. The first 80 minutes of this game were absolutely dire. The last 10 minutes really did give them some hope. And Alonso looked good when he came on as well. So and I think another thing that happened was Arsenal lost control of the game when Nketiah went off. So Arteta brought Trossard on. I kind of mentioned that last week. I wanted to see if Trossard tried at false nine to see if that would work. I begged in my face twice because I wanted it got what I wanted for Liverpool, got what I wanted for Arsenal. This didn't work either. Trossard was not strong enough to hold on to the ball, and I thought Arsenal lost an out ball through the middle, and that ended up kind of hurting. And Arsenal had to wait this game out a little bit. It wasn't calming for them, even though they had a 2-goal lead for most of the game. So and it did seem like Arteta kind of recognized that as well. So we probably won't see that again because he took off Martinelli for Gabriel, brought on his center back, and then basically moved Trossard to the wing and moved maybe Tomiyasu to almost like a traditional fullback. And so they went back to kind of a back four. They didn't try this, and they moved Partey into midfield. They didn't try this weird stuff that they were trying in the first half. So at least that was good by Arteta. I think that ended up kind of Forrest's chances kind of stopped after that. So that was good. But yeah, it was a bizarre game. All three goals came off recycled corner kicks. I thought that was interesting, or at least off a corner kick was involved. And the 3 points are all that matters to Arsenal. But we'll have to see what happens with the Timber injury. And it was interesting to see. Not only wasn't Nketiah important at getting the goal, it was interesting to see Arsenal kind of struggle when Nketiah went off. But as far as the stats went, 8.83 for Arsenal in XG. Forest 1.18. Arsenal 15 shots and 7 on target. Forest 6 shots and 2 on target. Arsenal was basically 80% of the ball. It was 84% to 16 in the first half. I think Forest got to 22% overall in the game. It was dire. Forest had 137 passes. Arsenal had almost 700 with 90% accuracy. And again, the way that teams are trying to focus a little bit more on first phase build up, especially if a team's not pressing you, we're going to see, I think, these passing numbers a little bit juiced here. I thought I take I had before the game was I was impressed by Arsenal's transfer business, getting it done early, being able to get everyone a preseason, and not having that late drama. And then the Timber injury has kind of set them back a little bit, and that could be a problem. But another thing I think that's interesting is right now it seems United, Liverpool, and Arsenal are currently doing kind of the same thing. And it seems that trying to squeeze an additional attacking player by playing them into midfield. So we have Mount for United, Kai Havertz for Arsenal, and then with Liverpool, it's Gakpo. And it hasn't worked out, I think, for the same reasons. Because one, everyone's playing a new position. They can't really take that, so that takes time to settle. That's fair. Um, I think the main thing though is, and all three are probably have something going forwards, but all three have been shown to be kind of a liability defensively. And I think you could definitely say that for Gakpo, and I think it's fair to say that for Havertz, and definitely Mount. Mount was ugh, he didn't have his best debut when we get to Man United, and so at least for Arsenal's perspective, it was revenge maybe for that May game. I do think Rice and Partey do play well together, and Rice offers a little of that extra security to stop transitions because the reason why Arsenal lost in that May game was Partey was ended up playing as right back. He was out of position, and the middle was cut open by Awane when Forrest were able to kind of get a break on them last year. And so Rice is going to he's going to offer a little more steel in that middle, make him harder to play through, at least through the middle. So I don't really like the idea of Partey going out wide in general. I thought that was kind of a weird thing to do. Um, and it seems one thing that's kind of worth saying is Zinchenko will being back will change how this team looks as well. Um, so at least in the short term, when Zinchenko gets back, maybe you won't miss Timber that much. Timber is probably a better defender, but in possession, I mean Zinchenko can do things. Zinchenko is like a line breaking passing, lines breaker passing passer. And he'll able to kind of get the ball, get on the ball on the turn. He'll be able to look and be able to find feet maybe where it's not really there, and that'll make Arsenal look a little bit better, look quicker, in their movement. So there's worth saying that as well. And then another thing to say is Saka did start sign a big contract at the end of the year last season, and what a way to start the season, and I mean that right side I've got it written down. It was poetry with Odegaard, Ben White making some runs, and Saka just the one touch triangle passing. When they were able to really kind of get started, was quite good. I mean, it took a while for Arsenal to grow into the game, but by the maybe like the 30th minute, they really did start to kind of cut through Forrest a little bit, and that's good because you imagine a lot of teams are going to try to play this way, going to try to play like these kind of deep blocks, and so Arsenal going to, especially without a striker, or maybe Nketiah as that striker, Arsenal going to have to find a way to have some passing patterns to beat it, and so maybe this is one way to do that. We'll have to see. Um, and then is Arsenal complete enough? Should they look to bring someone in? We'll have to see about that. And then for Forest, I didn't have any positives for them until Alanke and Awane came on. To be honest, and it's not just kind of the goal; just it livened Forest up a little bit. It seemed like their energy was back. It seemed like Forest were actually trying to press and win the ball a little bit. We found Morgan Gibbs White being a little bit more impactful when both those players came on. I think it's weird to play Brennan Johnson at center striker. We saw that tried a little bit last season. I don't think it ever worked. It seems like Johnson's role is being making some runs down the wing and kind of being creative that way. And it's also interesting how Johnson has been kind of rumored to maybe be out the door. I think Brentford have been looking at him. So I thought all around it was kind of a messy lineup by Cooper, and I don't understand why Iwani didn't start. So and Danilo came alive as well in that final 20 minutes. So it seems like Forrest went from probably thinking, "Oh, we're going to get relegated by Christmas," to maybe having some optimism at least after the changes came, because they did look better in the second half, and it's not to, it's not like Arsenal were dominant. To be honest, at least not like Arsenal had a lot of had looks to really trouble Turner. So it is what's kind of saying that they were competitive, even though it was not the most pleasing thing to watch. Uh, so I mean, because they only had 18% of the ball. I think another thing that's interesting is the way that the games are longer now. Is that going to be punished if a team that's just going to just sit back and try to just win games out by playing such a deep block? Does that finally kind of catch on to you as the games get longer and the legs kind of get tired? We'll have to see about that as well. But with Wani, how is this? I'm trying to think. Like with Awani, is someone going to actually try to maybe take a chance on him? Um, I'm trying to think. So you think of someone like Everton. Uh, who maybe you need something without Calvert-Lewin. Now he does have maybe injury issues as well. But I mean, it's interesting how Forrest kind of have this proven almost goal scorer, and they don't really play him. They don't really use him as much as maybe they should. And he's got pace for days. So I'm kind of surprised about that. We'll have to follow that story going forward. We'll see how we're doing for time, and I'm a little bit off. We'll get on to Newcastle and Aston Villa. So this one ends 5-1. This was the story maybe of the weekend, just about how good Newcastle looked. We got a goal from Tonali, Diaby, then Ishak, and then Ishak again, and then Callum Wilson comes on, and then Harvey Barnes. And I think the overreaction of the week honors goes to is Newcastle going to win the league? Because it wasn't just in April when Villa kind of it was just in April when Villa kind of spanked Newcastle. Um, and then all they've done is, and then that week they responded by thumping Spurs 6-1. But this was a statement win, to say the least. So and we saw Tonali get his debut start. We saw Anthony Gordon get a start over Harvey Barnes, which I was kind of surprised about. And what's funny is it was probably Anthony Gordon's best game. He's involved in two of the goals at least, with a couple big assists, a couple really nice through balls. He was pressing really well, causing some turnovers. He maybe wasn't. There was, I think, for the Diaby goal, he wasn't maybe the best at tracking a runner. But to be that is really all you can maybe say about that. I was wondering what the idea was to play with Gordon, and at least that he showed in this game. Maybe he can be in the cards a little bit for Eddie Howe. I mean, Newcastle is going to play a significantly more games this season than they did last year, so you're going to need to have some kind of depth, anyways. So that definitely is going to be something that Howe is going to be happy about. And so I mean to get to Villa, this game I think is kind of, I don't say it's full gold for Villa, because I mean losing Mings, everything changed. And Newcastle, I even texted a couple of my friends before this game. I was wondering how Villa's suicide high line was going to do with Newcastle, with a having Bruno and Tonali in the midfield that are able to kind of pick that ball over the top. And really, it seemed like Villa was handling Newcastle at least, competitively, until Tyrone Mings went down, and then after Pau Torres came in, that back line just completely crumbled. I thought it was also interesting to see Matty Cash and Digna played, um, where last year it was more like Ashley Young, who was more defensive minded, and towards the end of the season it was Alex Moreno that was playing. And Cash and Digna can be expansive and be fun offensively. But I thought it was so easy to get behind them. I thought they were maybe I thought Villa was maybe too open this game, and yeah, Newcastle thumped them. And it was interesting to see. I really do rate Babacar Kamara and Douglas Luiz as a midfield pivot. Normally they're the ones that can control tempo. And no, the absolute opposite happened. Tonali and Bruno were the ones that kind of did that to them. I do think a kind of a sneaky injury news is Emin Buendia has apparently done his ACL as well as Mings. And one, you're gonna have to play with John McGinn now a little bit more. I mean, Buendia is someone that would he would be able to keep the ball. He's not just creative. He also had goal threats in him as well. But he was just an outlet to just kind of hold on to the ball when being pressed and being able to find some play. And I think it's possible Ollie Watkins' goals is going to, I don't necessarily dry up, but it's going to hurt without Emin Buendia to be able to look up and get him the ball. I am a little worried about that now. They do have Jacob Ramsey coming back. Jacob Ramsey can be a runner, but he also showed last season he can be a good passer. So maybe the idea is to try him a little bit more. Maybe being a little bit older, he can kind of grow into that role a little bit. But I am worried about that a little bit. I mean, to get to the goals, I mean, it started off with a really crazy opening for Newcastle. They have a chance in the second minute where Bruno was able to force a turnover, and Mings was just enough to kind of put Isak off balance, because look, Isak was about to have a tap in. But they get the first goal with Tonali, and he basically starts this by shouldering Douglas Luiz off the ball on a 50-50. And then Newcastle quickly get the ball into the box. Trippier cuts inside. He finds Bruno, and then who tries a shot, and then that's saved, but Villa can't really clear the ball. And then Gordon is quickest to react to the rebound. He passes it to Joe Linton, who kind of fakes going backwards with the hips, only to play Gordon, making a run down the side, and then Gordon sends a really good ball into the box that finds Tonali, making a run. It's a really good finish by Tonali. It is poor by Kamara though. He loses track of Tonali in the box, and then Conte misses heading it away. And then there's a chance for Newcastle with Tonali again. This was close to making it 2-0. Tonali makes a really good run into the box and forces a save by Martinez, but the play is also set up by Anthony Gordon, who again is a genius with kind of a one-touch through ball to Tonali to kind of just send him free on the box. And then we have a chance for Diaby, and then we have a goal for Diaby with a fantastic finish. And so Trippier and Almiron kind of lose track of Digna, and Douglas Luiz kind of plays a great ball over the top for Digna to run onto, and then he tries an early cross, and it's deflected but finds Ollie Watkins. And what Ollie Watkins does is he tries to kind of head the ball, square the ball into the box, and that's where it finds Diaby all alone to volley it home. But Newcastle did lose track of Diaby here. Gordon, I think, is maybe at fault, but Joe Linton also loses track of Diaby because I think he leaves him to go to Ollie Watkins, and he's fooled by Ollie Watkins instead of trying to chest it down by heading it over. And I was a bit surprised by Howe's lineup, by playing, Joe Linton in midfield and maybe keeping Longstaff, out. Longstaff was maybe their midfielder out, not other than Bruno Guimaraes. Longstaff was maybe their midfielder of the season without the ball. He did a lot of work without the ball. And it was interesting to see, Joe Linton tried instead a little bit more offensive. And, it still worked out, to be fair. But I thought it was interesting. You maybe could have tried Joe Linton, further forward, because we saw that a lot last season, if you didn't think Harvey Barnes was ready. And no, Gordon was not only ready, Gordon was really, really good. And Joe Linton was as well. So Newcastle looked different. And then we'll get to the second goal. It's what a ball sent in by Tonali. And it's funny because the announcers said he looks like Pirlo. I think my buddy Jeremy mentioned he looks like Pirlo, but he basically is Gattuso with Pirlo's hair. I thought that was funny. But so what happens is the ball is sent in, and Botman then is level with Cash and squares the ball into the box that Isak's able to tap in. But Villa are unlucky here because the offside call is really, really tight. But they screw up with the highline defense. I think Kamara tries to jump forward, and it's just a little late. And then Isak with an easy finish, and it looks like he could have scored. He looks like he could score. I think I put down 25 goals. That maybe is a little high because Howe likes subbing him off, midway through games to play Callum Wilson as well. But I mean, both are going to score bags and bags of goals, you imagine, because the surface is going to be there. They win the ball high upfield, and they've got good guys to send balls in. They're going to be they're going to be fun, to say the least. And then we'll get to the Watkins injury. The Mings injury. So there's a chance for Aston Villa with Watkins. So Diaby kind of squares the ball into the box, and Watkins just kicks it. Watkins maybe should bury this, but on the play, Mings goes down because there's a weird shoulder challenge on Alexander Isak. Another thing that's crazy about this is Isak is so strong and tall and physical. It's going to be he can shoulder. Tyrone Mings is a big player, and he shows him he handles him here with kind of a shoulder challenge, and he holds his own. And Mings lands awkwardly. It almost feels like something pops when he's in the air, and he has to be stretched off. And I think it has come out that it is an ACL. And then we have a chance a little bit for Villa with Diaby, where there's another great through ball by Douglas Luiz, kind of threading something in. Diaby makes a great run at the box, but tries to beat Pope near post from a tiny angle instead of either going far post or trying to maybe find Watkins. So this is kind of what I mentioned last week. Diaby is a lot of fun, but sometimes his head isn't necessarily always there. Maybe his head is kind of down, looking down as opposed to being up. So maybe some headaches he'll cause Villa fans, but it'll also be a lot of fun. He's got goals in him, obviously. He scored a great goal here. And then there was maybe a chance at the end of halftime where it looked like Emi Martinez got lucky to not get brought down because he takes a chance and just completely loses track of the ball. It looks like Almiron's about to just go past him, and then he takes Almiron out, and it's only a yellow. But at halftime, I did feel like it was a relatively even game. Both teams were creating chances, to be honest, and both teams are finding the other a way to frustrate the other. I did feel like these two teams played in the U.S. In a preseason game, and I think it ended 3-3. You could see that. You could see both teams respected each other. Both teams kind of saw each other as kind of equal competitors. And then the second half, I think the injury to Mings really did show up. So we'll get to the third goal for Alexander Isak. I mean, Villa's high line is just finally just completely destroyed. Isak is just toying with the Villa center back, Kanza, who makes a mistake here, and it's a fantastic chip finish by Isak. It's worth saying as well. But right before this, Isak embarrassed Konsa again, where it looked like he had scored, and this one was just chalked off for offsides. But it's another really nicely timed and weighted through ball by Gordon here. And it's a beautiful goal because it starts from the back. So Villa looks like Villa are about to force a turnover, and then Bruno Guimaraes kind of fools Douglas Luiz by quickly turning past him with the ball. And then Isak gets in behind again later with Martinez kind of stopping to prevent him, preventing the hat trick. So this is a good save by Martinez. But again, like the speed at which Newcastle were able to win the ball back and then run with it. Almiron races past Kamara like he's not really there. And then he finds Isak just kind of dunking on Villa's back line again. This high line and trying to handle players and not running off you on the shoulder. It doesn't work without Mings. So Emery's going to have to rethink this a little bit. And then we have a Watkins chance. He beats Botman cutting inside, and the shot is saved by Pope. And then Cash hits a rebound over the bar. There's maybe a chance of Villa to somewhat get back into it, but not really. Howe made some subs. Brought on Wilson, brought on Barnes, and then Newcastle knocked two later. Villa's high line is beating again by Tonali finding Barnes. This is a really nice goal. Tonali finds Barnes, and then Barnes square ball finds Wilson. But this is a goal that something like Arsenal or City would score, in my opinion. It's like Newcastle have three center backs in a line, Tonali and Bruno in a pivot, and what happens is Tonali gets the ball and he's under pressure. He finds Bruno next to him. Bruno then quickly plays a clever ball, a forward ball that cuts through Villa to find Joelinton ahead. And what Joelinton does is he quickly one times the ball backwards to Tonali running behind him, and then he quickly one times the ball forwards for Barnes to run onto. Where Barnes is, and then Barnes is in behind everyone, and then he's able to square the ball to Wilson. And Emery playing a crazy high line gets caught again, and he was able to do this a lot last season. No one was able to really beat it. It seems like teams has maybe planned for this, and it's caught up to them. Not having Mings as well. And then there was another chance that Newcastle were able to get in behind, where it looked like Newcastle had a 2v1 with Barnes, and Barnes is unselfish. He maybe could go for goal himself. Or he tries to pass to Wilson, and the pass is just off, and they're able to kind of clear the ball off the line. And then Harvey Barnes makes it 5. This time it's Jacob Murphy who gets past Villa's midfield, and then he's able to kind of meet the high line, and it's just a simple through ball that is able to find Barnes, able to get him 1v1 with the keeper, and able to finish. The first time the full time takes is it is a worrying sign for Villa defensively that Newcastle exposed, but. Not to be negative, I think this is more about Newcastle making a statement that last year wasn't a fluke, and that they have arrived. They got past last season being rock solid defensively and opportunistic offensively. I guess you could maybe say. A lot of it was riding on getting wonder goals from Almiron, having that purple patch. That's not the case anymore. They've got goals from this team in the boatloads. They have two tempo guys to control more of the ball. This year in Tonali and Bruno, it doesn't seem like they're going to have issues, playing together. So it seems like that's going to be a pretty good partnership. And then they've got two number 9s that are not just they don't just score. The 9s can hold on to the ball. They can link play. They can go out wide. They can make runs out wide or through the middle. And put away chances. It's going to be interesting to see. Like if you try to set off Newcastle, they have players that can do things 1v1 that create chances. You can also cross the ball in, and Alexander Ishak, I think, is like 6'4". He's a threat in the box. So it's going to be harder and harder to play them. Another thing that they've done is they've added more quality on the ball without sacrificing like kind of that grit and hard-nosed effort to press and win the ball back. So it is interesting we're saying as well that it's night and day watching how this team has been built. Than say under the Saudi PIF fund, than say PSG. So that's kind of something to highlight as well. The key stats, I've got Newcastle with a 3.4 xG to Villa's 1.7. Shots were 17 and 13 on target. Villa was 16 shots and 6 on target. And 9 big chances for Newcastle is crazy. 4 missed. They did have more of the ball, 53%, and their passing was higher. It wasn't the 600 number that we've seen, from Arsenal and City and maybe Brighton, which we'll get to. So that's maybe the one thing to kind of highlight because they did a 428, 85% though. That's a higher percentage than they had last year. Replacing Tonali for Longstaff, it does make a difference. To be honest, Longstaff is better without the ball, but Tonali is not. Tonali's going to put himself to get into a challenge, as well. Just that they've improved. They've improved on the ball. Is worth kind of saying that, and they're strong. So what's a negative here? Is they're not maybe copying the soup du jour or eau du jour. The soup of the day. Here is they're not having 600 passes a game. So is that does that really matter? Because it doesn't seem like they're building possession from the back end like we've seen other teams kind of adapt to doing. I don't know if that's necessarily in Nick Pope's game or Shara Botman. Is worth kind of saying that as well. It doesn't seem like they're trying to try Trippier as kind of a fake, inverted fullback. They're basically playing Trippier to go to stay out wide to try to be a creative winger. He can cut inside and play centrally when he's in the final third, but they're not asking him to play in midfield. Maybe if anything, they are playing three center backs at a time because basically Botman's not making runs down the channel. Botman's just kind of staying defensively. But I don't think there's no reason to really critique this. It's different, but so far it is also working. And it doesn't seem like they're gonna have issues, winning the ball back. They were Villa were able to give them a few fits. To be fair, but I've seen this work for a team before. This high pressing and this able to win the ball high upfield and to be able to kind of attack when a team is out of position, because that's what Klopp was doing. And so the only thing I'm wondering here is, were those years when Klopp had Liverpool, was that just a time? Was that just good timing, where teams at that point in time weren't good enough at handling a press, weren't good enough at being able to keep on to the ball without turning it over when someone kind of put pressure on them? Because it does feel like, if anything, that's been the big change over the last few years. It's not just De Zerbi. Pep's done this. Well, Pep's always kind of thought this way. But there've been another teams that have tried to adapt to this, or Arsenal have tried to do this as well, where everything is about winning that first phase and build up and keeping possession of the ball and having tempo that you can control. And Newcastle don't necessarily seem to be doing that. So does that matter? Does it factor into the legs as we go on to the season? They're gonna have Champions League this year. They didn't have. They're gonna have more travel this year that they didn't have last season. So that's the only thing I can really think of, and we're gonna get our answers. If Newcastle can handle that, I do think the flip side on that is they do have a pretty big squad. Other than Tonali and Bruno, you can't miss them because they don't really have anyone with an eye for a pass, but they've got willing runners everywhere. Longstaff, Joe Willock. It seems like Murphy can do a job. Anthony Gordon showed he can do a job here. Elliot Anderson played well for them in the U.S. For that summer tour. You can maybe bring him on. So there's the reason for hope, obviously, if you're a Newcastle fan. And I think one thing that interesting is, if they did go on to do something big, I don't think it would be that surprising given their trajectory. Because given their ownership, it almost feels like you need to have a kind of like a state, funding your club. It seems, we can all think, Pep and Arteta are going to replace Klopp and Pep. But what if the next big thing in football is going to be, instead of it being a coach or player rivalry, before Klopp and Pep, you could argue, or you would argue, it was Messi and Ronaldo. And I'm wondering if instead it's going to be one between state-sponsored clubs. Is it going to be the Saudi PF fund versus the Qatari fund in Man City? That's maybe being cynical, but I do feel like we're going that way. Or Chelsea's kind of come here, and Chelsea's kind of saying, "Hey, what about us? We can spend money and kind of be that way too." If you have a crazy owner that's really just kind of just ignore any kind of financial rules, maybe that is kind of the way to look at the game now. To Newcastle and Cal's credit, though, they've spent a lot, but they've done it differently. They've been really smart at who they've targeted. They haven't just gone and chased stars. They've gone for guys that still maybe feel they still need to prove something, and still feel hungry. Getting Trippier when they did was absolutely genius by them, because he was 30 years old. He was playing well for Atletico Madrid, and it was just interesting how Man United could have gotten him probably. But they went out and they were like, no, we'll take a shot on him. Getting Bruno Guimaraes, beating everyone to him, beating everyone to Alexander Isak. This isn't. They've taken some chances here, And how has it also been able to make the players that were already there better? Made Longstaff better, made Almiron better. He's had Calvin Wilson, and it seems maybe whoever they brought in has been better in the medical staff, because it seems Calvin Wilson has been able to go a season or so with not necessarily having nearly as many injury problems as he's had in the past, and also being able to play him and Ishak, off and on, is going to save his legs as well. So again, there's a lot of reasons for optimism, and also what a debut for Tonali. And what a statement signing he was, because he was basically the dual DM of Serie A, and you'd be able to just kind of pick him up. Uh, I don't necessarily know if that's great for Serie A when you have prem clubs that are just able to just kind of bully other leagues and bully just take away their legit star players. But that is what's kind of happening. But you can see he's going to allow Bruno to be further upfield, be more in the final third. You saw Bruno take some chances and take some shots in this game, and they were on target. And you also saw that maybe when Bruno wants to be deep and be more defensive minded, you're going to see Tanade be able to make a run into the box, and you saw him being able to finish. And neither are. What's funny is both are fantastic at tempo and controlling the game. Both are really good at being pressed, but they're also both hound dogs, not afraid to commit a challenge and tackle to win the ball back. So I'm one last thing I want to say is this going to be the best offense in the league? It's easy to say that after they score 5 goals, but it seems like they're going to have incredible service. And then with 2 9s, and they have getting Harvey Barnes in. How is that going to change them? Because it's, a change of pace guy, and it seemed I was wondering if he's going to be able to make these runs in behind instead of coming for the ball. And we saw in this game, he was actually doing that. He was doing a really good job at running off the shoulder, at getting behind, and obviously had a good finish. So there's really no reasons to be negative at the minute. And then we get to see how serious to take Newcastle, because they play Man City this coming weekend, and then they follow up with Liverpool, and then it's the Zerbi's Brighton, all in the first 4 weeks of the season. So we're gonna see how serious to take them, or how bad this take is going to age, and then we'll get to Aston Villa. It's rotten injury luck to start the season with not just Howard Mings, but Emin Buendia as well. And then J.K. Ramsey has a foot injury, so he's not able to play yet. I think his timetable is supposed to be like September. So that's maybe something to be optimistic a little bit about. But it's maybe the positive is, and maybe not every team can exploit this. We didn't see many teams get the better of Villa last season, and when both Luiz and Kamara were on the field together. And just Newcastle had multiple players able to just run past them like they weren't there, and just able to get in behind Villa's, get past Villa's midfield, and then they're facing a back line that's playing 40, 50 yards away from goal, where Newcastle just has a number of guys looking to make a run off the shoulder. And to me, it looks similar to Liverpool last year versus Napoli, where there was no pressure on the ball. And when there's a press and it's weak, it allows guys on the ball to have the patience to look up and pick passes that maybe look to everyone like it's on a bird's eye, but on the ground, maybe the game is so fast and frantic, players can't see the passes in behind. But when you've got time, they can. And I think the downside to without Mings is Torres did come on and didn't look comfortable dealing with those situations up high. I mentioned last week I thought it was a good signing. I liked him when he was kind of playing a little bit more, almost like a back three in possession, and was asked to do more duties out wide. I do think it was interesting to see how when they were struggling so much with fullbacks, it seemed I don't remember Matty Cash or doing anything defensively. I think if anything, Emery made a mistake not bringing on Callum Chambers in the second half to maybe just offer another center back to be defensive minded. That would have made at least the back line a little bit better. I don't really know what's the idea is to do in the cards though. I mean, obviously the positive is Diaby scored and looked incredible. Um, and Emery is a terrific coach. He's shown that, so he should be able to sort this out. It just seems like maybe the idea instead of Villa being able to reach the heights that they did last season, these injuries are significant. So maybe it takes them from maybe having Europa dreams to maybe just kind of looking at a top 10 finish. We'll have to see. And then we'll move on to Brighton and Luton Town. Brighton also are a reason to be really, really high and optimistic. They end up winning 4-1 goals from Sully Marsh, Yao Pedro PK, then Carlton Morris got a PK to make it 2-1. And then Luton Town just ended up kind of combusting a little bit with Dangor getting a goal, and then Ferguson came on as like a second half sub, and man, did he look good. He only got like 20 minutes to run on, but he's able to score. He gets a nice kind of tap in here, but he also looked good when coming on. But the thing with Brighton is you have this Casado drama, and I was wondering what was the plan, in place? And I do think Brighton do look different in midfield. That's maybe kind of the, I don't necessarily think that's a negative, but it just, Dahoud and Gross are good players in their own right, but they're not. I didn't see Brighton doing the passes that Alexis McAllister was doing last year. I did feel like when Billy Gilmore came on, he can maybe offer that. So that's something to say, but I do think Brighton need to, if they've sold Casado, they need to think about bringing, a few players in, and they've now got $100 million that, everyone knows that they've got $100 million, so it might not be as easy for them to get stuff on the cheap. But they've got probably have the best scouting network at least in England, probably in world football, you could argue. And or maybe Red Bull, whatnot. But it's certainly up there, and so we're gonna have to see what Brighton decide to do with this Casado money that they've decided to move on from. And Brighton, there's no reason to not think Brighton are going to be serious contenders this year. I do think they're maybe weaker a little bit in midfield, but they've gotten stronger in the attack. So there's one thing to kind of say about that. And one player that definitely showed out was Alpedra. He just glides on the ball and seems to find kind of ways to skip past defenders with it. He looks like he could explode for goals this season. Just giving the only issue is who is the Serbian going to play over Welbeck, Pedro, and Ferguson. And then he got a taste for the Prem with Watford, but that was such an insanely unsettled, unorganized mess. It feels like he's going to enjoy his time here. But I think a couple of the observations I have is Luton Town were doing a decent job to make things difficult. I thought, they were playing a deep block. They're playing basically a 5-3-2 kind of formation. I did feel like the Kapore City Lundy was doing a decent job defending Matoma. And I did feel like they were closing gaps. It wasn't really easy for Brighton to play through them. And you basically saw a lot of crosses that Brighton were trying, and it wasn't really coming off. There was a couple chances where Yao Pedro was able to just kind of make a clever run and get underneath, and Luton Town were able to kind of just very quickly get lucky at basically stopping any shots from going on the goal. But I did think that first like 20 minutes there was reasons for maybe hope for Luton Town to at least kind of be in the game. And then on the flip side, when they were able to kind of turn Brighton over, they were able to go direct, and they were able to get up the field quickly. So there were chances here at least. But then we get to the goal. It's scored by Solly Marsh, and Matoma basically gets the ball back from Dahoud and sends the ball in, and the delivery is just spot on to find Solly Marsh splitting two Luton Town center backs. And then we've got a couple chances for first by Matoma, and then Pedro, and then Welbeck. Uh, so I mean, there wasn't a ton happening until basically the goal, and then really things really did open up. I did feel like, at least at halftime, it was a competitive game. Brighton obviously had the better chances, but London were doing a decent job to at least stay compact and be in the game. And then we get to the PK. Matoma basically has the ball on the string, and this is maybe the one time when Matoma really was impactful. And then he finds Pedro in the box, and then the defender just kind of reaches the leg out, and Pedro buys the foul. Um, and then, quickly, and then there's maybe a makeup call because Luton Town are able to get a PK of their own. Pedro loses the ball. Luton Town quickly get the ball upfield, and then just there's a cross that's just kind of sent in out wide, and it basically hits the back of like Dunk's hand going to ground. And then Morris sends a Will Steele the wrong way. So 2-1, Luton Town was somewhat in the game, and then out of nowhere, Brighton get one by Simon Adingra coming in. And, we mentioned it last week, how it seems like he's probably going to be a player that we discover this season, the way we discovered, Matoma and Enciso last year from Brighton, because he obviously does seem like he has an eye for goal. But this is all in Luton Town. They make a mess of trying to clear the ball away. They can't do it. And then I think Impanzu is the guy who mishits a clearance, and he's trying to be cute. He's trying to flick a ball over Adingra to clear it later, and the ball basically bounces in front of him, and Adingra just decides to have a pop, basically from close distance, but it's still you got to beat the keeper from near post, and he does, and he looks a really good player. And he was impressive in the U.S. preseason tour. So And then Ferguson comes on and he first hits the post. And it was the third post that they hit this game. This is nearly an amazing goal. Ferguson is touched to collect the pass from Instuppian is stupid good. He's running full speed and he catches it with his foot like I don't know, a baseball mitting a catcher's mitt. And he then turns and creates a little space for himself and then tries a curler from the far corner and it's just inches away. And then he does end up getting a goal for himself to make it 4-1. And it's a little window dressing because I mean Luton Town have a lot of positives to take away in my opinion, but they didn't see the game out well, and Estupiñán just kind of beats everyone in the back to get in behind after making a clever run unmarked. It's a really nice forward ball by Lewis Dunk, and then it's just a simple kind of square ball that Ferguson Estupiñán has Ferguson or Dingra to aim something at, and Ferguson is able to slide it in. Um, I mean, just kind of thoughts on the game was Brighton have lost a few players. It's a new look Brighton team, but it also shows how good they can look because they had 13 shots on goal and 27 attempts. A number of them really did come in the second half. As six big chances for Brighton, three times hit the woodwork. The Luton keeper did have eight saves, and Brighton did have majority of the ball you'd expect and nearly 600 passes with 91% accuracy. But I think the interesting thing here was 7 for 23. They did cross the ball a lot. 23 attempts is a big number for sometimes for teams. Now they were playing with Danny Welbeck. Danny Welbeck maybe likes the ball in the air. But I did think that was surprising to me a little bit. But anyways, it doesn't really matter. I just think it was a different Brighton than what we've seen in the past. It's not necessarily to be negative. I think it was interesting to see Milner get a start for them. That was stunning. And I thought it was also interesting to see Estupiñán played. Maybe Estupiñán is the kind of the idea, to be honest, because what you're noticing is Estupiñán was kind of playing a little bit more centrally. Maybe he's the idea to kind of play a little bit more in midfield until they get something in. Because he was playing centrally, he was also making some runs. Estupiñán was maybe the player of the game. Um, so that was maybe something to see. And as far as a Caicedo replacement, it looks like they've been linked to Andre Fluminense. They linked to Carlos Balba of Lille, and I saw Lucas Gunnar Dueth of Salzburg. And I don't know if the idea is to bring someone in or not. You imagine they probably would, but I mean the positive is they have attacking flair and a number of players maybe they didn't have last season. They have real depth. They can stretch back lines. That also they can be clever in tight areas. Just the kind of issue is, and it didn't feel like their build up necessarily suffered. It's just the time when Dahoud and Gross were getting the ball. You're finding that that's that second phase into the final third. They were struggling a little bit with that. I thought they was a little bit more side to side, or maybe going more direct, trying to find Matoma, than necessarily being more clever through the middle. It was just one game. Maybe just kind of a letting down, kind of maybe their shape kind of fit into that a little bit more. I did feel like Asupian was cutting in and playing more centrally, and that was maybe kind of the fix. Um, but it does seem interesting. I mean, they've lost Levy Colwell, Alexis Caicedo. I do wonder if they have enough with Pascal Gross, Gilmore, Lallana, Ayori, and Dahoud. Should they bring a couple players in? And they do have 110 million to play with now. But they could make some real noise if they get those signings in, and given their track record, there's really no reason to doubt them. There's an if there, but there's an if pretty much every team right now, and their proven track record is really good. So I would probably bet on that if that they do get that Caicedo replacement right. And if they do, Brighton are going to they're not just going to be a fun team; they're going to be a serious team. Um, and so the only issue is who does the Serbia play with that front line? With Ferguson, Welbeck, and Pedro, and they also have because Ferguson is like 18. I think Yao Pedro is maybe 20. So that's another thing to kind of think about. They're so crazy young. I mean Ferguson. I'm wondering he's too young for Spurs to kind of think about. But what do you do with him? Brighton sold Caicedo for an EPL record fee. If Evan Ferguson ends up kind of being what people, I don't want to say he's Harry Kane like, but the way for an 18-year-old, he's not just scoring goals. He can make these runs in behind, so he's got good pace to him. He's physical. He's got a really good touch to him. He can be creative. He can almost be like a 10. He can be like a second striker if you need to. The sky's the limit, to be honest. And it feels like Mbappe has mentioned Ferguson's name. They played each other in Ireland when France played Ireland, and I think a Euro game. and Mbappe spoke highly of him. So you imagine whatever Brighton sold the fee for Caicedo, Ferguson's maybe going to match it when they do decide to move on from him. If they do, maybe they decide to keep on to him. But for being 18, that's crazy. And Brighton are going to be in Europa, so you imagine whoever's maybe not playing games in the EPL, they're going to be playing in Europa. So it's a good problem for Brighton to have. And then yeah, for Luton Town, I do think Kabori played well. Um, I'm gonna ignore the scoreline because I did feel like the structure was okay. When they got forward, they made they looked dangerous. They just the final thing wasn't there. I do think Carlton Morris got close on a few headers. I do think they have goals in them. Um, One thing I do want to say is I mentioned last week how I thought they had signed James McAtee, the Man City player, and it looks like no, it's John McAtee, like the older brother who apparently played for Grimsby. So maybe not nearly as impactful or as talented. So that was kind of egg on my face. But yeah, as far as kind of some negatives and concerns, I would like to see them keep the ball better. Just 120 some passes or whatever it was, uh, and it does the defense completely collapsed in the second half. You understand you opening, you're trying to chase the game a little bit more. Brighton obviously could have scored more. The keeper did have 8 saves, and I did feel like the scoreline was harsh. But yeah, the couple of these that they let away in the last minute. The manager can't be happy about that. So we'll have to see how Luton Town respond as well, and then we'll move on to Brentford and Tottenham. This one ends 2-2. Yeah, we're doing time and not great. Um, this was a fun treat for Sunday. First getting a goal from Romero, and then Embremo with a PK, and then Weissa makes it 2-1, and then Royal out of nowhere kind of has a shot from top of the box. You don't really think of Royal as kind of a goal scorer, but it was maybe kind of a keeper error. I thought Flecken was kind of late to dive down. As far as kind of the leading off thing to say is Spurs tried first for David Raya, which is kind of funny, and were rejected. Agni came into, it was Agni's first game in charge, and then Son was captain for Spurs, and then it was a new era for both teams. Um, and was Spurs had a different keeper for this game, and so did Brentford. And I thought maybe both keepers kind of made a mistake a little bit. I thought Vicaria maybe had a chance to do better on Weiss's shot, but this game was fun. It was a fast start for Brentford. High pressing causing Spurs kind of fits at the back. Some turnovers. Van de Ven was called to make a recovery at the last minute. Van de Ven had a good debut. Uh, and then I thought the tactic note I had was Spurs fullbacks basically ended up joining in midfield and made things really compact there. And it was basically forcing Oliver Skip to be like, kind of your fullback, kind of do wide duties all by your own, and it made them crazy narrow in possession. But another thing it did is it gave them a lot of options when Brentford were trying to press and turn them over. But the negative here is the few times when Spurs were losing the ball, that the channels down the wings were open, and Brentford really exploited that. So it's not it's still kind of a work in progress probably for how Spurs are going to look. But Spurs do get the first goal. It's by Romero, so there's kind of a free kick, and it's a great ball sent in by James Maddison, and Romero's first to kind of head it in, but immediately after he gets subbed off because it looks like he was maybe concussed for this because right before this he had his head clouded in by Embremo, and I thought it was a bad look by them to let him carry on. So there was not necessarily, the announcers were saying, "Oh, good for Spurs for not letting him continue." No, he probably shouldn't have been on when he ended up even scoring from him. So I thought that was kind of cringe. Um, and then we got a couple chances here for Brentford. For one from Embremo, it's a really good save by Vicario, and it's a good response by Brentford. He did get down and early, and then I thought they got back into the game pretty well. They were able to kind of win the ball back, and then Weissa feeds Embremo making an overlap run. And then he shoots from a tight angle, and then I got a half chance for Brentford here, where Henry gets in behind and tries a really good square ball in the box. Spurs kind of deal with it, but it was again Spurs were vulnerable on the wings the entire real game, to be honest, because of Spurs playing the fullbacks out of possession. And then we've got a goal for Brentford by Mbeumo. It's a PK. This comes from like Jensen having a clever cutback and kind of fools Son into making a recovery, and then Son sticks the leg out and catches Jensen. And then Embremo kind of with PK duty with Tony being suspended and does a really good job to finish. But for the observation I have is Spurs looked a disorganized mess to start. I mean, the fullback's playing centrally, Skip was out wide. But and what it was doing is Brentford had an out ball, down the wing whenever they got the ball. And we really saw that throughout the entire game. That's probably something that other teams will be able to look at and try to copy. Now, because there was a lot of last second did the way Liverpool have been in the back with like Kanate and Virgil having to do just cover out wide duty sometimes because they're isolated. Van de Ven was having to do that as well. And the guy that came on for Romero. There's just a lot of cover for the center backs to do just in it too. So we'll probably it probably is a work in progress. But we'll get to the second goal for Brentford. It's scored by Wisa. It's another direct ball over the top, and this time from a free kick. And Bremer beats Emerson Royer to a ball and then squares it into a box that Wisa one times it past Vicaria. There was a deflection in front of him, but I do think he could maybe do better. And then I've got a chance for Son here. So there's kind of like a half chance, like with the Son volley. Spurs finally get Madison the ball, and then they're able to do the center ball in the box, and Brentford do a really good job to deny Madison. Um, Spurs do a really good job to finally get Madison the ball because they had done a good job to deny him for the most part. And he finds Son, and Son can't really connect. But I thought that was kind of another thing too. Is for the most part, it seemed like Spurs, Brentford understood that it doesn't matter if Emerson has the ball or Sam Basuma has the ball, or but basically anyone else. Like it seemed like the danger man, the guy with the delivery was going to be Madison, and so it seemed like Norgard did a really good job of kind of man marking him and being tight. And whenever Madison went out wide, that was maybe when Spurs were able to kind of get a little bit more influence on the ball. But at least in that first half, Madison did not have his best game. He came alive a little bit in the second half though. But Spurs were able to tie it at 2-2. So I said they didn't really mind when Emerson Royal had the ball, and that maybe bit them here. Because it is a great hit by Emerson Royal, who again is playing. It looks like he's going to have a central role this year. But I do feel like Flecken maybe sees us late. He maybe dives late. I feel like he can maybe do better because David Raya had one of the better save percentages of anyone in the league last season, and it feels like he probably would have gotten to this. And then there's a giant chance by Embremo to end the half. It's a great ball sent in by Rico Henry. Rico Henry had a really good game, and he's an underrated player in his own right. But Embremo can't really finish the chance. And then Embremo later in the game had another chance to maybe kind of clinch the game for Brentford, where it looks like all he had to do was just keep his shot on target, and he just kind of hit it wide. I mean, for halftime shots, it was one thing. 13 minutes of stoppage time was wild. But it was a lot of excitement. 4 goals and 2 keeper errors, I thought. Brentford were organized and looked at what they knew what to do, and Spurs were completely chaotic. And it made for a good contrast. And the only thing that I was thinking about is Spurs had so much, it was impossible to try to see who was making what one or what. And that chaos would have been just absolutely brilliant for Harry Kane to kind of play in. I feel like Kane would have scored bags and bags of goals had he given this project a year, but oh well. Well, we get on to the second half, and maybe the change that kind of changed the game for Brentford was Jensen got off, had to started the second half injured, and that brought off Damsgaard. And I think what that happened was Brentford weren't necessarily great in possession to begin with. After that, is Damsgaard was trying to be a little bit more attack minded, and it seemed like Spurs were able to kind of win the ball back a little bit more. And in the second half, you also saw that Spurs kind of chaos, disorganization, whatever you want to call it, having like 10 guys in like a 20-yard circle, ended up showing up and really ended up helping them because Brentford were not able to turn them over. There were just too many options. It seemed like every time the Spurs looked around, they had an extra man or two as just kind of an easy way to kind of just pass the ball and escape pressure. And it seemed, again, kind of like we saw with Burnley, the legs kind of gave out a little bit. So I do think the only thing that was interesting was it felt like Brentford knew that Madison was kind of the danger man in the final third. They didn't really care about Basuma or Skip having the ball. Yeah, I was wondering if maybe Højbjerg or Lo Celso could have come on and been a little bit more of a threat. And then we have a chance for Son. There was a really good save by Flecken. Flecken actually did play better in the second half, to be fair to him. And then we have a chance for Richarlison, where Madison was finally able to kind of get a touch in the final third when the game was stretched a little bit, and he nearly plays Richarlison in on goal. but that Flecken's able to stop him right there. And then we've got uh we've got a couple changes where Brentford were able to bring on Kevin Shada. Um, and this was get lucky here because Van de Ven takes a chance, kind of trying to bring down Shada in the box. It looked like Shada was able to have some fun. Going at Spurs, kind of chaos back line. Again, they were vulnerable with that ball over the top. Shada gets in the box and he's brought down here, and then at the very end, it looks like the keeper comes down and Shada's brought down again, and the keeper's kind of late a little bit here, and Brentford were able to force some danger moments. And I did feel like Spurs got away with a near handball, towards the end. So Shota came in and he was impactful. So if you're a Brentford fan, that's something to be hopeful about. It was wild. I mean, 2.2 xG for Brentford, 1.27 for Tottenham. Brentford with 8 shots and only 4 on target, but 4 big chances and 3 missed. Obviously, you're missing Tony. And then Tottenham only 7 shots and 3. There wasn't a whole lot of shots, but it was just end-to-end chaos. It is probably the best way to kind of put it. There was a lot of chances where it seemed like there was about to be a shot, and either someone made a last-ditch kind of deflection or not. It wasn't just there wasn't just a lot of just passing around and standing around. Tottenham had 638 passes with 90% accuracy, and Brentford with 235. So Brentford just weren't able to hold on to the ball, and the pressing structure was really really frustrating. Their Tottenham's passing was really frustrating Brentford's pressing structure, and over 600 passes completed for Tottenham is that's really good because Brentford were really good at turning people over last season, and this isn't something that we saw with Conte's Spurs. And it's just one game for Agne. So I think there's a lot of optimism I think here for Spurs fans. Um, and we'll get started with Spurs. I thought Bissouma played well. Skip. The only thing that was negative is I thought Oliver Skip just playing out wide. It's you're playing him out of position. I thought it was weird. I didn't really think he had his best game. I didn't think there were a couple chances where Brentford still were having able to Rico Henry able to get down on that side, and it didn't seem like Skip was necessarily great defensively either. I thought it was also weird because we saw Skip actually get forward and get a couple goals versus Barcelona just like a week ago. So that was a bit surprising. The Madison did struggle a little bit here. It seemed like everyone just kind of knew that it seemed like maybe the idea was to create a little chaos to kind of do a little mirage where the idea is still try to get Madison the ball as much as possible. And it seemed Brentford weren't really biting for that. I thought they feel like Norgard had a really good game in that respect. And then Van de Ven had a pretty decent debut. Madison was okay, came alive in the second half. Basuma, though, maybe his best game as a Spurs player. Passed the ball well, was strong in challenges, physical when he needed to be, and he's maybe closer to the player that we saw at Brighton. So that's maybe something that's really something to be hopeful about. And then I did feel like the chaos ball. One thing that maybe the negative here is I think it hurts Kulishevsky and Son, and I feel like both didn't necessarily have their best games because it forces them to maintain their width. They're the ones that now have to be like kind of the wide creators, where it seems like both like to come inside from the wide areas to kind of join numbers into the attack coming narrow, and they're already really really narrow. So I don't necessarily know if that's going to work out. So again, it's just kind of one game. We'll have to necessarily see. And then I do think Kane would have scored bags and bags of goals in this just positionless football almost. But oh well. And then with Brentford, the highlight is it really is missing Raya, unfortunately. Um, you don't like really going there, but it is hard to kind of say that Flecken maybe would have done a little bit better. Because he was a terrific shot stopper. So he did have a better second half, to be fair to him. Um, good reactions at least. So maybe the idea is just kind of diving low and late. That can maybe be coached and fixed. So we'll have to see. And then Bremer was helter skelter in front of goal. Still, he had a chance to win this late. And you're gonna have to take your chances without Tony if you're not gonna bring anyone else in. And I just think they're not good enough to be able to maintain hold on the ball. Just to kind of save some energy in the game. I do feel like they're a better team, at least when Jensen and Norgard are able to play together. Well, when one of them is missing, it shows. They definitely look different. And so we'll have to see. And then with Spurs, you have Man United next. So we'll have to see how that works out. For Brentford, let's see. I mean, I mentioned that last week. They were a team coming into the season that I was unsure of, and they've sold David Raya, and Flecken made some errors in preseason that I was concerned about. But I think maybe the one, and it's just kind of a small sample size, but maybe one positive here is Brentford. Brentford are a settled side, and I don't feel like they're going to beat themselves. I mean, they're well organized. They defend well in a block. They do possess an attacking threat when they are able to go direct and get forward. Um, and so really, when they can get Imbremo and Weaker Henry and Rice to the ball kind of in space. And so as we saw kind of with Forrest last year, bringing a number of players can make a side kind of unsettled. And Brentford maybe aren't going to be in that predicament. And when you really think about it, all they really have to do is hang on till January to get Ivan Toney back. You imagine, unless they end up selling Toney, and they probably should still be okay. I'm still a little slightly concerned, but at least they're better than at least 3 or 4 teams that they played on the weekend. That's worth kind of saying as well. Um, but I mean, the window still hasn't closed yet, so I mean, the couple of teams can maybe improve a little bit, and Brentford can improve as well. We'll have to see. And then we'll move on to Man United and Wolves, and this game ended up being way more fun than I was expecting. I mean, Man United do go on to win 1-0 with a goal from Rafael Varane, but I think this game kind of changed my mind on both teams coming into this. I mean, there was no Rasmus yet for Man United, and Onana got his debut. It was a hit and miss for Onana, which we'll get into. And then with Wolves were just not again. This was not at all what I was expecting. So they did bring in Gary O'Neill. I think he was only in for like 4 or 5 days before this game. No one knew what to really expect. I mean, the lineup looks good on paper. With Semedo, Dawson, Kilman, Nauri, Neto, Yao Gomez, and Lamena, and Mateus Nunes, and Sarabia and Cunha. And it just seems what I wasn't really expecting was just how insane they were going to be able to just manhandle United in midfield, and that's really what happened. Um, I mean, United did maybe have the first chance where they were able to kind of force Wolves into a bad turnover, but Wolves did well to get back in possession and kind of force United back. But the first like 20 minutes, the notes I had was United's build up play was really slow to start. So Anata's better at his feet than David Gea. But it seems like maybe they've overcorrected because it seems like they're expecting Hanada to maybe hoof it forward, and that's not happening. And there was a lot of passing that was side to side and backwards from the defenders. Hanada was kind of looking to see someone kind of make a run, maybe close to get closer to him, and it wasn't really happening. Another thing that was interesting was Casemiro was kind of getting the ball, and Bruno and Mount were playing really high ahead of him. And so there was really no one near Casemiro, and I thought the options were kind of limited. And anytime that United tried to get that ball to Bruno or Mount, either from Casemiro or from Shaw, it was getting blocked off. And anytime that was happening, that was a chance for Wolves to kind of get the ball on a turnover and break they did. And that was how the entire game kind of played out. To be honest, I thought it was another thing that happened was Martinez had a really bad challenge early on Neto and got a yellow card like 60 minutes in. And so after that, Martinez wasn't able to kind of do what he likes doing. He likes being physical. He likes taking chances. And because that wasn't able to happen, I thought Martinez was kind of exposed a little bit in this game because he wasn't able to be as aggressive as he likes because you can't risk getting that second yellow. And basically, Wolves would just like run past him. He wasn't really able to do anything, and you basically saw um, Lindelof come on in the second half for him, and basically the reason was for that. Another thing that I saw was Garnacho and Anthony as wide options were not really working out. They were losing the ball. I think Rashford had 4 touches to start the first half. Nothing was really working out. And then really after about let's see, maybe the 20 or 25th minute mark, I've got chance after chance for Wolves. So I mean, just Acuna just immediately turned into Roberto Firmino out of nowhere. He just kind of beats 2 players here. He just runs past Casemiro and Martinez, who's on a yellow. Martinez can't really get close to him, and then Cunha just runs the ball all the way like 60 yards upfield, and then passes it to Sarabia, who just misses the corner of the net. And then Wolves, 30 minutes in, Wolves have another chance, and it seems a big chance here. Cunha just can't hit the target. A ball's kind of crossed in. It wasn't just Cunha. Neto was taking people 1v1 and beating them. Neto looks like he has his pace again, which is really good for Wolves. Mateus Nunes was taking people on, and not winning the ball back, but also carrying the ball. Like, anytime Wolves were winning the ball, they weren't just quickly looking to pass it away. If the space was there, they were carrying it. They were dribbling it and taking chances, and it was fun. It was not something you normally see, to be honest, in the English game. And it's kind of wild that it's happening under Gary O'Neill. I don't know if he'll try to coach that out of him or not. But to be fair, Bournemouth were fun under O'Neill. So maybe this is maybe I should have been a little bit more hopeful of them signing him than maybe I was, because it seemed like Wolves knew exactly what they wanted to do to United. They wanted to basically outnumber them in midfield, make things hard. Kind of deny Bruno getting the ball, kind of deny Rashford being able to get touches. And anytime that United were able to, misplay a pass and turn it over, Wolves were able to break, and break they did. And it was just it was weird because it seemed like United were a side that was confused on how they wanted to play. It didn't really feel like Mount and Bruno was working out together. I feel like Ericsson maybe offers more balance. Um, and it's because maybe Ericsson recognized, hey, maybe drop deep to kind of give Casemiro kind of an Asian option to just keep the ball a little bit more. Maybe Luke Shaw could have done that. It just United were struggling significantly, and in the second half was a lot of the same. I have no idea how Wolves didn't score on this one. So there was a genius move by Nunez to just kind of turn and break into space, and then he sends the ball out wide, and the ball is crossed in, and then Cunha just from 3 yards out smacks the post. The only negative I think here is Wolves didn't score for all of their good play. Um, and they certainly deserved it. And really, for the most part, it was their own doing. It's not like United were really great defending. Just the finishing just wasn't there. But man, the way that I haven't seen a team run at United this way. Liverpool kind of did. I guess last season in that 7-0 game. But it was honestly it was similar to that. This could have been a big number. And it was United's debut. It was at Old Trafford. It was for a team that people were maybe expecting to struggle in a relegation fight this season. I mean, maybe they do, but because they didn't. I think one thing is they didn't create chances either. They didn't just uh, escape relegation by the skin of their teeth. They didn't score a lot of goals and they didn't create chances, and they created a ton of chances in this game. And then Anana, we get to the goal. Um, it comes from Varane, and basically after all those missed chances, it finally comes back to haunt them. Bruno is finally able to get the ball in some space, and he does a really good job to flick it into the box that Wan-Bissaka is able to run onto, and then Bissaka does well to flick the ball into the 6 yard area that Varane's able to head at him. And Varane was, I guess, maybe you could say maybe the player of the game because he gets the goal, but he also he had maybe the second best chance right before halftime where. It looks like he did well to free himself, and he just actually missed. He missed that header, so he was able to kind of make amends for that. But I do think it was interesting how Bruno came on and he was able to have maybe his best moment in the game when Ericsson had come on for Mason Mount like 10 minutes before this. But really, kind of the main talking point was Onana kind of cleaning Klasenes out last minute. He gets none of the ball. I was amazed that this wasn't called back. I was amazed it wasn't called in real time. Absolutely stunned it wasn't in with the VAR error. And O'Neill, got a yellow card, and I think he got spoken with after the game. Basically, I think he was told that no, they made a mistake here. So I don't understand how that's possible in the VAR era. That sounds a little shady to me. Um, it's hard to argue that they didn't deserve something from this game, and it absolutely is a foul by Onana. And it seems like one thing you can say about him is he did have a couple of nice saves in this game, and obviously everyone knows about his feet, but he was reckless, coming out and swinging any ball crossed in. So I wonder if other teams will try to look at that. But no, this was a funny game because I think the team that won is maybe more concerned than the team that lost. So overaction for week one was Newcastle's going to finish top two, and Wolves can maybe finish 10th. I don't really know. Comfortably safe from relegation, I guess. I don't. It is just one game that is an overreaction, but this looks like I don't know, like a prime Sevilla team like coming into Old Trafford, in a Europa game like a knockout, and not a team that's set to fight relegation. And I think a lot of it was United's doing by just playing Casemiro in midfield by himself and being clueless in the press, not having front players to do anything to win the ball back. Rashford, Garnacho, and Antony, not just in the press, but not doing anything to track back and to help to maybe cover some of that space left in midfield. Just Wolves. There was space for any time that Wolves wanted to. to exploit it, and they did a good job of doing that. And again, it's just 23 shots and 6 on target. The XG was 2.227. Man United was 1.46. Man United had 15 shots, 3 on target. Wolves, I think Man United did have, I think, 51%. So they did edge him a little bit in possession. And passing was about the same, 379 for Man United, Wolves 340. That's a low number in passing. We're seeing more and more teams being able to reach that 500 passing number, reach 6 even. And I think that this was a warning game for Man United, and not just for Casemiro, just kind of asking him to just play on an island. I think it's weird how they signing Mount instead of Casemiro was weird. Now I don't know if you knew that he was going to cover across basically double what Mount was. But another thing that's interesting is there's someone that they linked to with Safrim Amrabat. Maybe he comes in and he would at least offer you to play kind of a pivot, at least give you some steel in midfield if you're not going to do because the way that they were doing with Mount and Bruno, it's too attack minded to me. And maybe against a deep block, maybe when you need to get a goal, and chase a game, maybe you can do that. But with this, unless Mount or Bruno learns to play deeper and learns to do defensive duties, this isn't going to work. So yeah, I mean, just the positives. I didn't have a lot of positives. Garnacho and Antony were poor as well. Worth saying that. I mean, I think a positive here is this isn't going to be the full United team. Rashford is going to probably play on the left when you get Rasmus. So you're going to have a number 9 to play with. It seems like Man United seemed to like playing off the counter. Rasmus and is probably going to maybe help with that, especially with Rashford in his more prime possession. But this was rough. I think 99% of the Wolves' attack came from just exploiting United through the middle or through United's like left side, and it wasn't Wan-Bissaka's side. So I don't know if like maybe Shaw had an issue as well. But yeah, United's buildup was really bad. That's worth kind of we mentioned that before, and then let's see, the midfield did look lost when Onana was trying to pass from the back. And so what's funny is I was wondering if I was guilty of this. I was blaming De Gea last season. Maybe the idea was more structurally. So that's kind of we're saying that as well. I do think Ten Hag needs to rethink this a little bit. And they have Spurs next. Maybe the good news here is the way that Spurs were just playing this disorganized chaos stuff that was allowing space everywhere down the wings. Bruno can get on the ball and can send in something for Rashford to run onto. Maybe United will enjoy that. But we'll have to see. And then for Wolves, you have the Cunha debut. He was a player last season, but you finally signed him, and really you had the Gary O'Neill debut. I mean, the midfield. So Yao Gomez and Mateus Nunes, and Neto just dunked on United. Yao Gomez was 9 for 15 in ground duels, 4 tackles. Mateus Nunes was 12 for 22 for ground duels. 5 for 9 dribbles and 3 tackles. And just the positive is everything. Considering just how Wolves looked last year. I mean, basically it seemed like everyone went on holiday once they secured their safety last season. So I think that's the reason why Lopetegui didn't really enjoy coaching them the last season, because they ended up they've sold a few players. They've gotten rid of Neves, they've gotten rid of Moutinho. And I think there was a game where Brighton ended up scoring 7 or 8 goals on them towards the end of the season, and this did not look at all like the same team. I mean, the confidence players displayed on the ball was non-English or European like. Neto looks recovered and fresh. Cunha, Nunes, Lemena, and Aït-Nouri, Semedo, and on. Just so many players looked comfortable with the ball at their feet and with time and when being pressed. I haven't seen a side again turn upfield and find space like this. Um, and the amount of chances they were able to just kind of just create by simply, turning United over and cutting through them was wild. I guess the negative is they didn't score. And maybe unlucky not to get a PK. But Cunha was a finish away from getting a 10 out of 10 performance. And I mentioned Firmino. I don't think that's an exaggeration. He looked incredible in the way he was able to just kind of drop into midfield and then turn and then run like 60 yards. He even had a little bit more than Firmino. It seemed like anytime someone was about to catch up to him, he had another gear that surprised people. So I was worried about Wolves coming into the season. They fired their manager like 5 games before the season. They sold Jimenez. They spent 50 million on Cunha. Maybe you can see why. They saw what they had in him. But I think the thing about Gary O'Neill is he proved last year he's a good coach. And he's not this rah rah come on boys type of manager. Um, he didn't just do that to get his team to safety. I remember talking with Rex. There were a number of games that I noticed where he made really good adjustments in the second half to help his side pick up points. So it seems like he can tactically, pick games up. And I doubted them last week, and I'm kind of convinced they're going to be okay now. Again, this is just one game, but another thing that's worth saying is, maybe if the space isn't necessarily there, what are they going to do? But it doesn't seem like they have issues like finding creative players, finding passers. Now, Mateus Nunes maybe had one mistake is he didn't have a pass in him, but they still have Daniel Pedence that they can come in and be a creative playmaker. It was worth saying that as well. And then they also have a 6'6" Kolasinac striker that they can come on. So if they're playing against kind of a back line where everything's kind of tight, you can cross the ball in, and maybe you can score goals that way. And they didn't have Kolasinac the entire last season. So the only thing is, Gary O'Neill doesn't maybe have his Solanke yet to put away his chances, but he's got everything else. They look quite good. And then we'll move on to Fulham and Everton. And in a very similar way, I think Everton fans can look at the season where there's reasons for maybe more hope than you would expect. I mean, they did lose by one goal to Decor or Vareed. I think, yeah, I think there's maybe a mix of them expecting just absolute dread, feeling horror inside them to start the season, and they end the game mixed with some weird optimism. Um, so it is worth kind of saying that. I mean, with Fulham, it was weird to see Mitrovic on the bench. So that's maybe a positive for them. It did seem like they tried maybe a different lineup formation, and it was done maybe to mask Paulinho missing. So that's worth saying that as well. Fulham aren't really the finished product yet, if they can hold on to him. And it did feel like they benefited when Andres Porina and Mitrovic came on in the second half because they basically played a role in the goal. Um, I mean, they did have a couple chances here. Let's see. There was maybe a chance when William was able to kind of feed Anthony Robinson, making a direct run down the wing, and Robinson's able to kind of send a good ball in the box, but no one's really there to get on the end of it. But this was all Everton. There were a couple chances where Mapai was able to get in on goal. He forced a couple really good saves by Leno. Leno was player of the game, in my opinion. There are a couple chances where a couple ways to look at this, where you can look at absolute dread, where Mapai is just not going to finish any kind of chances. I think Mapai wasn't creating any of these chances last season, and he looks a better player. You don't have Calvert Lewin. Where are you going to go for goals? Maybe Mapai can clean up a little bit. I mean, I don't necessarily think his finishing was off this game. I just think Leno was actually incredibly good. I do think Decore can maybe do better on the chance that he had when everything was great leading up to this, except for the finish when it was after Everton were able to kind of just break on a counter. Anana is able to kind of slip in a ball where he's running behind. Anana carries it upfield, then squares the ball in the middle to Decore, who then basically carries it past Ream and Bassett to get on goal, and it's the up. And he has two guys maybe to the side of him. He could even square this, and it's kind of a miss hit, saved by Leno. And then Everton actually did score. The goal is ruled off. Like this was kind of lame. Where Leno had an amazing game, but he messed up here and got bailed out by VAR. It looks like he's trying to get the ball. He's trying to stop a ball got being crossed in, and he loses it after landing on Tarkowski. And there's a loose ball that I think Michael Keane is able to tap in. And then so yeah, at halftime, just Everton were just all over Fulham, and really that nothing really changed. That was what it was in the second half as well. I mean, Jimenez was able to hit the post in the second half, and he did well here. So Kerry Wilson had a clever run. Iwobi can't really catch up, and Wilson's able to get the ball and sends in a hopeful cross into the box that finds Jimenez. He does a good job to get power on it. It's a good volley, and it just barely misses wide. So if you're a Fulham fan, that can be encouraging. Really the chance came here to kind of win the game for Everton, and it was blown by Patterson. So Patterson kind of hits the post, so Iwobi does well to just create a little space outside the box and tries an effort that Leno can only push away. And the ball basically finds Patterson kind of doing a follow-up, and he's got a lot of the goal to aim at, and his rebound effort, it's he has a good power on it, but it strikes the post, and then that ends up costing them because Fulham do get the first goal by Bobby Reed, and Everton were the dominant team, but they did waste some chances, and all that happens here is a loose ball in the box, squared across the goal, finds Harrison Reed beating everyone to the ball to smash it in, but key player in the move is Mitrovic. Mitrovic has come on as a sub, and he drops in a little pocket of space to help link up play here, and he plays a really cleverly weighted ball into the penalty area for Andres Pereira to run onto, and then slides the ball back to square it. A hard across goal that Reed's able to run onto. And from an Everton point of view, and the only thing to say is it's maybe poor by James Garner to not recognize how far ahead Bobby Reed is here to start the move. So because Pereira makes his run kind of inside, he drags Patterson away to Mark Pereira, and really there's absolutely no one else on the side. So Bobby Reed is a free man here. And Mitrovic, what he does is has taken out two of Everton's center backs to start here. Tarkowski gets caught trying to Mark Harrison Reed's run, so that drops him out. And it doesn't take much to kind of switch off here. And all that happens here to allow a man to be wide open, that's what happens here. So it's rotten luck for Everton because for the most part, I thought Garner and Patterson did really well to recognize, when one goes forward, kind of one stays back to cover for defense. But here, Garner doesn't recognize that Patterson has to mark two guys here. And what happens after Mitrovic plays Andres Pereira is Patterson runs to kind of cut that off, and that leaves over Reed completely all by himself. So once Pereira is able to get the ball past and square it, it's going to be a goal, and that's what happens. And that really is the game. I mean, so again, the reason why there's a little optimism here is Everton had 9 shots and 9 on target, 4 big chances. Fulham was only 9 shots and 2. Everton did have less of the ball. Fulham did have more of the ball, 288 passes, and Fulham 470. And crosses was 5 of 26 for Everton, and then 3 of 11 for Fulham, which is again you got Raul Jimenez. Now maybe he doesn't like going for crosses anymore, but when you get Mitrovic back in, maybe you can cross it in a little bit more. You have Anthony Robinson, who's good at getting wide and sending balls in. But I do think this was maybe a game of similar to what Wolves and United had, where it's interesting to be more optimistic about the team that lost than the team that won. Everton do have striker issues, but I do think Maupay gets credit for being in position for a lot of those chances. And it's not, and because it's not a game about chances though, it is about finishing, and Everton switching off in one play allowed Fulham a chance to kind of break up into the game, and the game probably should have ended 1-1 because of that disallowed goal, but it is what it is. I think there were a lot of positives though if you're an Everton fan. There's a lot of meh in this league, in my opinion. Kind of surrounding them. So Everton didn't score, and they do miss Calvert-Lewin, but they did create 19 chances. So and Maupay can maybe do better a little bit here, but it can't really be fun for these fans to go from thinking they had an outside shot at breaking into Europe with Ancelotti like 3 years ago, to just hoping they stay up. But that's kind of where they're at. But this suggests they maybe do have enough to stay up. The midfield is EPL caliber, and it's worth kind of saying that. Especially, I mean, Decore, Onana, Idrissa Gueye are going to be they can cover so much distance, so they can defend without the ball and they can defend it deep. But what they can also do is they can also win it back, and they're not just going to look to pass it and get rid of the ball. They can progress with it. They can run with it, and cover a lot of distance. And so they're so good. They're so long. They are able to force a lot of bad passes, a lot of turnovers. So all they need is to find a finisher. So I don't really know what the idea is. They signed Yusuf Chimene. It's a lot to ask of a 19-year-old, but we'll have to see. And then I mentioned Forrest Awani. I know he has fitness issues of his own, but I'm curious if maybe they'd look to him. Other than that, they did bring in Danjuma, on loan. It's kind of like the same thing. You have reasons for optimism, but at the same time, you're still a little worried because the same issue that happened last year, it has showed up in just the first game. You're missing Calvert-Lewin. You probably win this game with Calvert-Lewin, but Calvert-Lewin can't go for you, and you lose. And you're also missing Dwight McNeil to start. So it's obviously not the same player. But I am wondering if Dyche has a plan for Dele Alli. It was interesting to see him pictured in the stands. His loan in Turkey didn't go too great, but he's viewed as maybe a washed up player. But he did an interview in the UK, opening up a little bit about personal battles and personal trauma. And it was a bit moving. So maybe he's motivated again, and maybe Dyche will give him a little opportunity again because it seems like there is a spot for someone to come in and be a creative playmaker and try to help them score some goals. So we'll have to see about that. And then for Fulham get the win, but it wasn't convincing. The only thing I'll say here is no Polina, no Mitrovic, and they did look better when Mitrovic and Pereira did come on. So it's not the finished product. I do think there was a lot of turmoil in the summer, and so to get off to a win is good. And Mitrovic did come on in the second half and did help them get to a goal. Raul Jimenez didn't score, but I did think he actually played okay. And you got him for 7 million, so you have maybe striker depth that you didn't have last season. And you're missing Paulinho. To be honest, I am surprised I haven't tried for Tyler Adams. I know he's injured now, but maybe and he wouldn't start over Harrison Reed. But if something happens to Paulinho, maybe you'd have a second backup there. Because I don't think Sasa Lucic has really helped out there. And you're also missing Tosin. I think Tosin's a better partner than Tim Ream because Tim Ream did not have a good job. One of the reasons why Mopé was having fun is Tim Ream was unable to catch up to him. And I don't really think Mopé is really that fast for pace. So yeah, Fulham had to allow Everton to make Leno make 9 saves. That's not good. So that's something to focus on. And then we move on to West Ham and Bournemouth. This one ends 1-1 with Bowen getting a goal, saving David Moyes again, which is kind of a theme that we're used to seeing. And then Solanke getting one to tie it. There was basically a different look to Bournemouth. Max Aarons has been signed, and then Kurritz has come in. And we also saw Billing, who was basically like a second striker for them last season, and he was more of kind of a midfielder, kind of a deep midfielder with Rothwell. That's probably not I imagine that's not really the full replacement. I think they have been linked to Tyler Adams. I mentioned him for Fulham. I think they have been linked to him as well. So maybe the idea is to try him and Rothwell together. I think Cook is injured and he can maybe come in. It was Jefferson Lerma last season. He's been sold to Palace. So that's something to maybe follow. And they're missing Watatara and James Tavernier. You imagine they're going to find a way to fit into this lineup as well. I do think it's kind of interesting how John Brooks got a couple chances here. John Brooks, he's battled cancer or battled some kind of, is it leukemia? He's battled something for a couple of years, and he's recovered. And he's not just recovered to get a couple charity minutes. He's looked quite good. He looks maybe to full fitness again, and he got a couple really good volleys in this game. So I don't necessarily know if he's maybe playing just because you're missing a couple guys injured, but he'll be good for depth. But we'll get to the goal, and it comes from you West Ham or an incomplete product, we'll probably say. But Pablo Fornals is able to go to ground. He wins the ball back and he gets the ball high in Bournemouth's end. I think Rothwell is trying to be too cute here, and Rothwell had a good game, but he made a mess here. And then Fornals is able to get the ball quickly to Jared Bowen, and Bowen free from any defender, and he picks his target basically top of the box, and it's a beautiful curler. And then a couple chances. First for Solanke, there's a terrific through ball by Max Aarons. He's able to pick Solanke making a run, and Solanke can't beat Areola from the tight angle. And then we have Rothwell, who's able to kind of make up for his error. He tries to curl it from outside the box, and he beats Areola, but he can't beat the crossbar. And then we have the goal. So it comes from Semedo has come on as a sub, and he tries a shot. It's a poor one, but it deflects right to Solanke's path, and he does a really good job to kind of take the first touch on controlling the ball, and then he has a presence to dribble past a diving Areola to finish away the chance into the empty net, and it's great composure by Solanke here. But it's risky to go to the ground and try to beat the keeper because that second touch has to be spot on, and it is here. And it's he does a real job to stay on sides, and then a couple chances late for West Ham with Ings towards the end, and then Paqueta. So the one maybe negative to Bournemouth all last season was they struggled defending set pieces, and on here, they can't clear a couple balls away. They can't clear an instant corner kick. West Ham will take a recycle possession, get another chance, and then a cross is kind of deflected. It finds its way to Paqueta, who's like 12 yards away, and his shot is quite it's heading to goal, and it's just kind of it's denied by the post by just a little bit. But again, that was kind of a worrying sign here. But if you're Bournemouth, there are some signs that there are some positives, I think, because you saw a lot more of the ball than you had last season. They weren't really a possession team last year under Gary O'Neill. 63%, is 423 passes. That's quite good. I mean, for West Ham, 206 with 68% accuracy. That might be the lowest of anyone that played the entire weekend, and that to me is definitely troubling. Now the positive thing is it looks like Alvarez and Ward-Prowse are about to join, and those are good passers, so that could maybe improve them. I mean, West Ham are an incomplete side, to say that, in the least. I mean, you have Jared Bowen, you can rely on and be a hero, but I think the positive is they're not complete right now. So it looks like maybe they're going to bring Alvarez, maybe James Ward-Prowse. It looks like the Harry Maguire deal has stalled. But out of nowhere, Man City have been linked to bidding like $90 million for Lucas Paqueta. And I'm sure they'd like another 90 million to play with, but this late in the window, I'm not sure you can scout a replacement and bring him in time to make it worth it. Because I don't think someone like Flynn Downs would probably be the next man up. I don't think he's ready to be a full-time starter yet. So I'd be surprised to see what West Ham do with that, because they have been linked to do that. I think it's weird how they've sold Rice. They knew they were going to lose Rice back basically when they won the Conference League back in May, and they've spent all summer not doing anything to address that. That's been very weird to me. That's not a good sign that the operation is running well there. And they do have some quality on the bench. Ings can score goals. Antonio and Cornet, if Moyes will play them, can score some goals. But I mean, they're thoroughly outplayed here. And it's a way to Bournemouth, not easy. I understand, but yeah, I don't think you can rely on Jared Bowen wonder goals to keep you up this season. And I think what's crazy is they missed out on Champions League just barely 2 seasons ago. And a bit like Everton, they've gone from that to looking like, hey, they're just kind of just struggling to stay up. I mean, they won Conference League, yeah, a Europe competition. So that shows you where they were just a season ago. And it feels like they're not going to be back to getting to that level. It looks like they've maybe stalled, and that can be frustrating. That can be also scary. We just saw what happened with Leicester. And I do think it's maybe harsh, but I think it's interesting. I think it would have made sense for all parties. They had David Moyes moved in the summer. I thought the Conference League final was kind of a perfect way to kind of a storybook ending, to kind of show that the team had reached its peak, and it was time to maybe move on with each other, because it seems like the team needs a serious reboot or rebuild. And maybe he's the right name for the job. I don't really know, but this could go wrong and stale quickly. And if they don't get the rebuild right, you look at the roster. Right now, I don't think it's strong enough. Um, it could change. There is 2 weeks to go into the transfer window, but I could see West Ham with a new manager by January. And to be honest, I personally wouldn't be surprised if they look at Graham Potter. We'll have to put that. We'll have to see. And then with Bournemouth, there's a lot of positives. Max Aarons had a debut. It looked good. I thought Kirkert's debut looked good as well. Um, it's also not really the finished product, but I think like the main thing you can say is they have a reliable number 9 that you can count on to get you a goal. And also in number 9 that really doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. He's got pretty good touch to him. He can make runs into channels. He can drop and be a link up man. He's strong on the ball. And obviously has an eye for goal, but also has composure in front of the net. Just kind of the finish that he's looking here. And when you're looking at other around the league, Fulham have that in Mitrovic if he stays. Brentford have that in Tony. Well, I mean, when they get him back, Forrest maybe have that in Awani. Bournemouth have that in Solanke, and maybe Luton Town have that in Carlton Morris. We'll have to see. Everton don't have that when Calvert-Lewin doesn't play. They do have it when he is, but we can't really rely on that. Burnley don't really have that. You don't think? Maybe Wanghorst. Sheffield, I don't think have that right now. Wolves don't have that. And before this weekend, you can maybe put Palace there. Because Edouard only had 2 goals, I think, last season, but he answered the call at least, this week. But that's something to maybe keep an eye on. Just sometimes it's all it really takes to stay up. It's not just being defensively, but just having someone you can rely on to get you a goal when you need it. And I did feel like as far as Areola's debut. They looked impressed. They looked improved in possession. And only 1 game, and you still have Tavernier and Watatara to add to this attacking core. So and the way that Max Aarons was playing these balls for Solanke to run onto, you imagine Watatara is gonna love that if that's the idea. So they can also be a little direct, it seems. So we'll have to see. And then we'll finish with Sheffield and Crystal Palace. and Crystal Palace to go on to win 1-0 with a goal from Edouard. And this is the Hodgson blueprint that I remember. Depositing early wins, kind of early. Getting teams when they aren't really settled and allowing them maybe a cushion to survive. That could be a little harsh. I do think I don't necessarily think Palace have enough as it is now, and it seems a lot of people are linked to their players. Liverpool are linked to Decore. It seems like they've lost Elise either to Chelsea. I think City have been linked as well. I'm about to link or suggest a link to City in Eze. It seems I don't really think it's fair for Palace to just lose all their players to a raid. But it just seems they've done a good job to actually build up the squad a little bit. Um, and Hodgson has done well to come in, and I don't really know what Patrick Vieira was doing. And Patrick Vieira is apparently over in Ligue 1 now, managing either Lyon or Marseille. But well, Hodgson has come in, and he keeps winning with them. And then with Sheffield were kind of just kind of a mess, kind of what you would maybe expect. They only had maybe 2 chances all game. I think they had 8 shots and 1 on target. Crystal Palace had 24 shots and 8 on target. Because majority of possession, 466 passes as well. And it wasn't just it wasn't just like a number of shots. Like they were quality to looks. I was impressed. I really liked what I saw. I liked the movement that we saw a little bit. I mean, I thought Jefferson Lerma coming in from Bournemouth was good. He not just good at winning the ball back, but that little partnership with him and Decore, well, it was quite good. But really, it seemed the idea was get the ball to Eze. You don't have Zaha anymore. You don't have Elise, but Eze was able to. It seemed like anytime someone was near the box, he was able to pick out someone making a really clever run. And it seems he just has an eye for a pass that you just wouldn't expect. He's also really clever at cutting inside and just being quick. He used to. I think when he was a wide player before he had his injury, his ACL injury or Achilles injury, and maybe he doesn't have the outright pace for that, but he's learned to become a really good inside midfielder, almost like attacking midfielder. And you look at someone that's struggling maybe for chances, someone that would benefit from maybe someone being able to pick out a clever ball into the box. It probably would be Holland. So I do think I don't think City is going to necessarily do it. I don't think Palace want to lose someone like that after selling Elise. But that is just something that I was thinking about watching this because he's a real talent. I'll be shocked if he doesn't start getting England call ups. It was a well team performance to be honest. It was a different look to them, but I thought the midfield was balanced and looked good. I was impressed with what Lerma offered on the ball. Decore can be a ball winner. But Lerma was maybe I thought that was a pretty good partnership. And then there are links apparently to Decore from Liverpool. And so they'll probably ask for a ransom, but I mean that is what Liverpool deserve. I do think it's possible that Liverpool could maybe offer Curtis Jones because I think they have inquired about him. And Curtis Jones did play a kind of a deeper defensive holding role for England in the summer. But I don't necessarily know if that is what they want. But it is Eze's team and maybe Edouard's team at the minute. So it's not just Eze that had a good game. Edouard's goal was really good. It was really good to recognize when to attack the ball, when to make the run, and it was a good finish. And Edouard Odson Edouard didn't necessarily play a lot last season. For some reason, he's always been kind of in and out of the squad. Now's a big season for him to kind of prove himself, and it looks like Hodgson's going to give him an opportunity. So we'll have to see. And then with Sheffield, it really wasn't a lot of positives with Sheffield. I mean, they played in a back five. They were compact a little bit. They weren't really able to create chances. I think they sold Ilian Ndiaye, and he not only was he their leading scorer, he was also their lead creator. Obviously, you don't have McAtee this season as well, and they struggled for creative play. I mean, 2 forwards that started in this game, I think, were 20 years old, and it showed. They also sold Sanderberg to a fellow promoted side in Burnley, which is weird. So I don't really know what the idea is for them. I mean, it feels like Norwood is going to have to maybe lead the midfield with Sanderberg being missing, and maybe Ryan Brewster, a former Liverpool player who wasn't available this game, and I don't think he has really started for them in the championship. Maybe when he gets available, maybe the idea is to try him a little bit more. But I think, Sheffield is a team that out of all of them, I think I'm certain I would probably pencil them in now. It's kind of unfortunate to say, but it doesn't seem like they offered enough, and I don't think they offer enough defensively either. And then that's kind of it. I did go way too long on that because I ended up putting out a lot of stuff that I wasn't expecting to talk about because I haven't had a 3 hour episode yet. Anyways, that is it for the show. We've got Man City playing Sevilla in the Super League, Super Cup. I guess tomorrow, and then the weekend kind of kicks off again, and we'll be back here. So I guess that is it for me at the reserve squad. I guess you stay squatting and stop recording.